Hey everyone, Spicy Toast Gaming here. Thank you for tuning in to another video. In today's video, we're going to be breaking down all the best relic combinations for level 19 through 25. So that's going to be the best 2 rare relic combinations, and then 2 rares, and then 1 common relic. Now, we're not going to be addressing epic relics here, because while you're leveling up, most people aren't going to be having epic relics to unlock and put on their champion. But we've already done a epic relic breakdown video going over all the epic relics and giving you some tips on who to use them on. And then we have already done the video of the earlier levels. So if you're looking for the best relic combinations for the early levels, check the link down below and we'll try to have the first video in this series there for you. Now, before we get into it, one thing I just want to mention is that for some champions, there are relics you are specifically wanting to combo together, so it's very important that you have the exact relics to get the best combos. But for some other champions, they have a handful of relics that are all good for them, and you can really mix and match and just tune it for whatever you like. So we'll try to give you a heads up with every single champion on if this is a important combination you can't really split up, or if these are just relics you can mix and match to find the best combination that works best for your playstyle. Also, we'll be trying to give you several different alternative builds or giving you a handful of relics. So just in case you don't have some of the relics we suggest, there should be some there that you will be able to have and use on your champion. Now, there's a lot of champions to go through, so we're going to try to do this fairly quickly, but if you're enjoying all this daily Path of Champions coverage, a like and subscribe is greatly appreciated, and let's get into it. Now, up first, we do have Aatrox, and Aatrox is one where it's a bit more of a mix and match and kind of choose what you want. Up first, though, Crown Guard Inheritance, when I level up Rally, this is quite good for Aatrox because his level up gives you a very strong effect of giving you a bunch of stats, and then also Darken Allies cost 5 less. So normally when you level up, you could just end soon thereafter, so being able to rally as soon as upon you level is really good for clearing adventures quite quickly. So throwing on a Crown Guard Inheritance is always a great option. Then Aatrox does have some strike synergy based on his star powers, and then also his effect right here of strike heal your Nexus 2. So you do have a lot of strike synergy, so going for a Stalker's Blade or a Gatebreaker also works out quite well. I would normally go for a Stalker's Blade. And then the Berserker's Buckle, when I survive damage, grant me 2/2. This works out very well because Aatrox, he gets regen from his equipment, and then he also has a champion spell that he and an enemy strike each other, and then when you play this, you get another copy of the spell that's cheaper, and then again another copy of the spell that is cheaper. So potentially with Aatrox, you can have him get 3 strikes off just from his champion spell. All those strikes, you're going to be taking that damage, scaling up, and then healing at the end of the round. So Berserker's Buckle, great way to be able to heal up your Aatrox as well. And then to pair that, you could also go for a counter plan. So if you want to go for a build that was a little bit slower and focus more on scaling up your Aatrox, you can go for Berserker's Buckle plus counter plan, or go for something like counter plan plus Archangel Staff if you just want to have the mana to play more of those spells, but you don't care about Aatrox's scaling quite as much. And then the last rare relic we really want to shout out is the Troll King's Crown. Pretty simple and straightforward, giving your allies Overwhelm. Now, Aatrox gets Overwhelm when he levels, and you do have some elusive, so it's not quite as important, but always solid. So if you want to go for more of a simple build where Aatrox, when you level up, you rally, then you have Overwhelm just to try to end games kind of as fast as possible, this would also be solid. But again, Aatrox is really one where you can mix and match and take a lot of these different relics. I will say, though, there are some combinations, such as, again, that like Berserker's Buckle plus Grand General's Counterplan. Now, as far as common relics, there's not any that you necessarily have to go for. Chameleon's Necklace, just to get some extra copies of Aatrox, is pretty good. He is a 6 cost, but you do like to have him in your opening hand so we can try to get cost reduced from his star powers. So Chameleon's Necklace, not bad. Your champion spell is also really good, so even if you have Aatrox on the board, getting more copies of him doesn't feel bad at all. Lost Chapter, decent, being able to play him and immediately try to play a spell. It's okay, not quite as good as it is on many other champions. And then last up, going for the Armadillo Shell, +1 health and tough. Tough actually can mitigate quite a lot of damage, and since you might be taking a whole bunch of hits with Aatrox, actually not a bad approach. If you are going for like the Berserker's Buckle build to scale him up when he gets strikes off, then the Armadillo Shell to kind of reduce down that damage to make sure he can get hit more in a round and survive is also a decent approach. Annie is up next, and another one where there's a pretty solid combination of relics, and you kind of want to pick just the 2 that work out the best for you. So here we have Archangel Staff, round start to refill your spell mana. Very good for Annie because since she is a 1 cost and very focused on spells, you can have her on the board pretty much the entire game, and so you're getting tons of value out of Archangel Staff. highly recommend that one. Luden's Tempest, all of your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage. This is essentially just giving you another tier of Annie's star powers, because this is doing the exact same effect that her star powers are doing. So making all your spells and skills hit a little bit harder. Solid, but this is probably the one that I would cut until you hit level 30. And then the Grand General's counter plan, this is actually quite good for Annie. So round start, create a fleeting copy of me in hand. Now her fleeting copy is the Disintegrate. Pick a unit, the next time it takes 1 or more damage this round, kill it. So gives you some amazing removal. Also, this is in your starting deck and it gets 2 items on it. For one, it gets mana potion, so this goes down to a 1 cost, and it also has elixir of skill on it, so you actually draw 1 from this. So you can play this for very cheap, lets you take out pretty much any enemy target as long as you can follow up with any other damage. But the way you can play this is it gives you a lot of flexibility, because you'll always have the spell generated to be able to play it. You'll have the mana to play it because of your Archangel Staff, but if you think Annie has potential to die this round, you can actually hold on to it, and that way if the enemy kills your Annie, since you don't have an Annie on the board, her champion spell will just turn into a fleeting copy of Annie, so you can play her. So it also gives you a safety net. Very versatile and great to use. So this would really be my go-to if I was leveling her and just got 2 rare relics. And this is going to be very flexible no matter what content you're taking her into. Now, as far as the relics, as common relics to pair this with, Chameleon's Necklace is very good. Since Annie's a 1 cost, you want to be able to draw her and play her round 1. And then again, any extra copies of Annie, it's a very good spell, so you don't mind having extra copies lying around. But you could also go for Lost Chapter, play Refill Your Spell Mana, if you want to be able to play spells immediately upon dropping your Annie. Not quite as important, since normally you're going to be playing her round 1, and then Archangel Staff will be covering every other round. So I would normally go for the Chameleon's Necklace. But if you're really worried about Annie dying, you could also go for a Banshee's Veil for the extra little bit of protection. All right, Ashe is up next, and this is actually, again, kind of similar to Annie, a combo that I wouldn't really split up. That's the Grand General's Counterplan plus Archangel Staff. Now, Ashe's champion spell is the Flash Freeze, so 3 cost, burst speed, frostbite an enemy, and then since this is her champion spell, create an Ashe in your deck. Having this level of control every single round to be able to just frostbite an enemy target, and then because the Archangel Staff, you always have the mana to play it, is very, very good. And again, this is in her starting deck, her champion spell that is. This has the Hex Tech Fabricator rank 2, so when you play this, you're giving your strongest unit a rare item. So very good just to have this extra level of control. And similar to Annie, if you think your Ashe is going to die, you can hold off, not play this. And then if they kill your Ashe, you then drop your fleeting copy to give you another just kind of safety net of protection. And once again, going for the Chameleon's Necklace is very good just to make sure you're playing your Ashe. Then any extra copies are being converted into a very good spell for you. Now, if you don't want to run with Chameleon's Necklace, Banshee's Veil, again, decent for some protection. Or if you think you need some on-demand control, throwing on the Everfrost, so when I'm summoned, stun the strongest enemy, can also be decent. Now, it's obviously a stun, not a frostbite, so it's not going to contribute to her level up, but just giving you a nice solid amount of CC whenever you're dropping your Ashe. Now, while I think this is best if you don't have one of these relics, you can always go for like a Stalker's Blade. Annie has a decent attack power, so being able to drop her and get a strike off, not bad. Or just going for Corrupted Star Fragment, support, kill my support ally, grant me its stats and keywords, just to further buff up your Ashe, is also solid. Now, I think the other combination is definitely better, but these are just general good rare relics to throw on pretty much any champion. All right, Aurelion Sol is up next, and with Aurelion Sol from your star powers, when you drop him, he's going to immediately level, which is why some of these rare relics are so good. So up first, Deceiver's Crest. When I level up, create a copy of my champion spell in hand. It costs 0 this round. Now, this isn't really needed if you have your Aurelion Sol at 4 stars, but if not, this is going to be fantastic for you because his champion spell is The Skies Descend. Deal 15 damage to all enemies, and it's going to cost 0 from this Deceiver's Crest. Now, if you have him at 4 stars, he already essentially plays this for free, but if you don't have him at 4 stars, this is a way you can still get that effect off, so very good. And then Crown Guard Inheritance when I level up Rally. So essentially just when you drop Aurelion Sol and then immediately giving you a Rally. So that is excellent. Another relic you can throw on if you want is the Guardian's Trinket. So Adventure Start, add 2 copies of a random champion to your deck, attach a random epic item to it. So if you want to focus on just getting a whole bunch of champions, throwing on a Guardian Trinket or two can also be fun for you. Now, as far as the last relic, Z-Drive Prototype is really the best for Aurelion Sol. Start adventures with 2+ rerolls. With Aurelion Sol, you really want to be sure you're getting the right powers, especially any powers that are generating a created card every single round. So being sure you can actually get those powers is very good for you. So getting those extra rerolls is fantastic. So highly recommend running with the Z-Drive Prototype anytime you have a common slot for Aurelion Sol. All right, Bard is up next. So up first, Corrupted Star Fragment support. Kill my supported ally, grant me its keywords and stats. And Bard is also another one that is not as combo based. You can really just slot whatever relics you like that work for him. It's not like you have to pair these together, but Corrupted Star Fragment, absolutely fantastic. Not only are you able to then buff up your Bard, giving him a bunch of stats and extra keywords, which you're generating tons of from your star powers, but this also contributes to his level up condition. You've increased the total stats of allies in play or hand by 20. So since this contributes to his level up, your Bard levels up insanely fast. And then you have this just massive unit that has a bunch of stats, a bunch of keywords, and just dominates the enemy. So this is by far, I would say, the best rare relic for him. So 100% recommend using this. The Berserker's Buckle, when I survive damage, grant me 2/2. Now, another way for Bard to be able to buff up his stats, which again contributes to his level up. So this is decent, but definitely doesn't work out quite as well as Corrupted Star Fragment. And often the enemy will just avoid blocking your Bard if they can help it, because they don't want to contribute to his level up. Now, other than these two, just going for any relic that gives you a stat increase is decent, because from Bard star powers, when you play an ally with buff stats, you grant them 2 random keywords. So if you wanted to go for a rare relic like Succubus Brand, 1/1, when I kill a unit, I summon a random husk, that could pair quite well with Corrupted Star Fragment, making sure you have some buffed up stats immediately. And then when you're killing units from this support effect, you're generating a husk, which can then further buff up other units. But also going for like a Fist or Warhammer, the other stat relics are also fine here. As far as the common relic, going for Chameleon's Necklace is quite nice, because Bard has the effect that round start, if you have 3 or more mana gems, plant a chime in your deck for each Bard that started the game in your deck. So having more copies of Bard makes you have more chime generation every round start once you hit that 3 or more mana. So Chameleon's Necklace, getting more copies of your Bard, gives you more chimes, which is very helpful. Now, while this is an excellent common relic, being able to again just throw on a stat relic like Soul Spear or also Dreams of Yordles to just buff up Bard stats so that whenever you're playing him, he's always going to have those 2 random keywords. That is also solid. All right, Darius is up next, and he's actually a interesting one. For one, you could actually just go for all common relics, and that's actually a very good strategy for Darius. So going for like Z-Drive Prototype, start adventures with 2 or more rerolls. Very good for Darius. You want to be sure you can get the right powers to complement, well, your star powers. And then also can be very important to get a good support champion for Darius. And you can actually just focus on them as the main champion, because Darius has very good powers that are quite flexible and can work very well with a just strong support champion. So going for those extra rerolls can really help you out. And then Star Child Staff, game start, heal your Nexus 5. With Darius, you want your units to be attacking, not defending. They have very high attack stats, but very low health stats. So often it can be a smart play to not have your unit block because they'll die. You'll just take the hit and then try to attack back. So being able to have that extra sustain is quite nice. So again, just going for common relics, not a bad strategy for Darius. But if you want to use some rare relics, Crown Guard Inheritance when I level up Rally. Darius has the level up of I see the enemy Nexus has half of its starting health or less. So since he's pretty expensive, by the time you drop Darius, the enemy Nexus should be below half. So he can immediately rally, try to attack, and close out the game for you. Gatebreaker is another solid relic. Play I strike the enemy Nexus. This can be decent with Crown Guard, although you'd want to switch this order so that Crown Guard will go off first, but a great way to just try to hit and chunk down the enemy Nexus. And then last up, Scourge's Stash. Plunder I cost 2 less if you want to try to get Darius on the board a little bit earlier. All right, next up we have Diana. And Diana is another one where you can kind of pick and choose the rare relics that work best to kind of exactly fit how you want her to play. Up first, Troll King's Crown. Allies have Overwhelm. With Diana, she can get double attack, so having Overwhelm is incredibly important. That way your first attack doesn't just kill the enemy and then fizzle your double attack. As long as you have Overwhelm, even if someone blocks you, both those strikes can essentially go through them and hit the Nexus. So Overwhelm is very important. So having Troll King's Crown is good, But there is also a common relic if you want to use it that can just give it to Diana, which would be good if you wanted to throw on a different rare relic. The Bounty Hunter's Renown, I have 1/1 for every 200 golds you have. So if you just want to focus on making Diana an absolute monster, you can use this, go through an adventure, and try to not spend any of your gold. She'll just get tons of stats, and by the end of it will be just one-shotting the enemy nexus. So this is a fun relic you can go for, but it will really change your playstyle as you don't want to spend any of your gold. Corrupted Star Fragment is also always decent on Diana to be able to get stats on her and just keep having her be your main win condition, especially since she is just a 2 cost. You can have her on the board round 1 and just keep buffing her up throughout the entire course of a game. And then one actual combo that you would want to keep together would be going for the Archangel Staff plus the Grand General's counter plan, being able to have your mana refilled each round so you can play her champion spell, which is right here, the Pale Cascade. Give an ally 1/1 this round, Nightfall, draw 1, create a Diana in your deck. So being able to buff up your Diana, get some extra draw going, which is quite nice. You can potentially draw another one of these cards. And this does have the Hextech Fabricator rank 2 on it from your starting deck. So this is able to give your strongest unit, normally Diana, a rare item. So while the 1/1 is temporary, this is a way to trigger your Nightfall, helping your Diana level up and giving her rare items. And then, as always with Grand General's counter plan, it can be a bit of a safety net. If the enemy kills your champion, you then have this fleeting copy, you can try to play them again. So if you want to go for a little bit of a slower build that you're not trying to just rush down the enemy incredibly quickly, this is a decent one for that. Now, as far as common relics, a lot of different ways you can go with her. For one, the Troll King's Crusher, giving you that overwhelm. Really nice if you're not getting overwhelmed any other way. So great common relic to be able to throw on. Chameleon's Necklace, game start, create 2 copies of me in your deck. Fantastic for trying to have Diana in your opening hand, so you can play her right away and then also play any copies of her champion spell, because she really has an excellent champion spell. Lost Chapter, to again be able to play Diana, immediately play any extra copies you have of her, just really putting the pressure on the enemy early. And then last up, Banshee's Veil, if you just want to have that extra layer of protection. All right, Ekko is up next. As far as a rare relic combination, pretty similar to many of the other ones we've showcased. Archangel Staff plus Grand General's counterplan. Pretty good. His champion spell is a interesting one where you're drawing a card and you're creating a parallel convergence in your deck. That parallel convergence start a free attack with an exact ephemeral copy of each ally. So you're not actually making a super powerful card, you're shuffling a super powerful card into your deck, and then you're drawing a card. So this has a little bit of a delayed payoff, but it is a very powerful effect. So again, great if you want to go for a little bit of slower games, but have these like crazy combos. But some other great cards to throw on: Chemtech Duplicator. When you play a spell, if you have 6 or more mana gems, copy it with the same targets. With Ekko, you have a lot of very strong spells. Being able to double them can be absolutely crazy. So Chemtech Duplicator does take a little bit longer to get going, but can work out quite well. And you could pair this with the Grand General's counterplan that we just had here. So you won't have the extra spell mana, but normally by the point you're at 6 or more mana gems, not going to be that big of a deal for you. But another awesome relic you can go with is Stalker's Blade. When I'm summoned, I strike the weakest enemy. Because you see with Ekko, when you strike, you create a fleeting time trick in hand. That is your predict, then draw 1. Since you are a predict deck, getting this going is fantastic. And Stalker's Blade is a summon effect. So you can actually get this to trigger multiple times. If you play like a Parallel Convergence, where you summon a ephemeral copy of Ekko, he'll get that strike off. Or Chrono Break, if your Ekko dies, this revives him. You can get that strike off as well. So Stalker's Blade is pretty solid, giving you that flexibility and just often a whole bunch of time tricks. So another great one to go with. And then as far as common relics, going for Challenger for that quick attack. So you have the quick attack Challenger combo, very good. So throwing that on isn't bad. And then as for most champions, throwing on the Banshee's Veil, if you feel like you need that extra layer of protection, is solid. Everfrost, also very good. When I'm summoned, I stun the strongest enemy. Similar to Stalker's Blade, since this is also a summon effect, you can trigger this potentially multiple times with your Ekko, giving a lot more power from it than most other champions. And then the final two, Lost Chapter as normal, refilling your spell mana. Ekko, especially if you're playing with Stalker's Blade, does have spells to immediately play. With the Stalker's Blade and that fleeting time trick, this will cost mana, at least initially. Once he's leveled, it won't. But before then, having the mana to actually play that time trick is very nice. Now, this is unfortunately nerfed to a play effect, so this will only activate when you first play Ekko, not every time you summon him, like Stalker's Blade. So that's a little bit sad. That used to be a much stronger combination. And then last up, just the good old Chameleon's Necklace, getting more copies of Ekko, just so you can play him, and then his champion spell, also quite good for you. All right, Elder Dragon is up next, and he's actually a pretty simple and straightforward one. He gets a lot of power later on with Epic Relics, but when you're just playing him normally, really just going for one of the strike relics, or both if you want. Stalker's Blade, when I'm summoned, I strike the weakest enemy. Since you have this massive attack pool, you're going to kill pretty much whatever you strike. Gatebreaker, play, I strike the enemy nexus. So again, chunking down the enemy nexus for a good amount of damage when you play him. Also quite solid. And then last up, allies have Overwhelm the Troll King's Crown. This is like the one keyword you don't really generate on your units. So giving you whole board Overwhelm is pretty solid. This is definitely a bit weaker on Elder Dragon because he has to be on the board to be able to play this, but is still a decent effect. But in general, I would go for Stalker's Blade or Gatebreaker for my rare relics. As far as common relics, normally would just go for Z-Drive Prototype just to get those extra rerolls to make sure we get the right powers. But some other alternatives, even though I don't think they'd be quite as good, would just be the Troll King's Crown. Make sure Elder Dragon can actually strike through and do that damage and not get blocked out. And then also Chameleon's Necklace, just to make sure you draw your Elder Dragon. Now, he is pretty expensive, so normally you'll be able to have him in hand by the time you need to draw him, but there's still sometimes games where you just never draw the champion you need. And so Chameleon's Necklace, just to try to reduce that down, is pretty good, but other than most champions, it's not nearly as needed, especially his champion spell. Normally, you're not really going to play it, so having extra copies of Elder Dragon doesn't actually help you too much. I will say, though, Star Child Staff can also be decent. Game Start Heal your Nexus 5, just in case you're struggling a little bit with Elder Dragon and you could use that extra little bit of sustain. Elise is up next, and she's a little bit of a interesting one because if you have her at 3 stars, it really changes your priority. Because at 3 stars, you can then give your spiderlings all of your keywords, which is fantastic. So if you are at 3 stars, this would kind of be the best or one of the best possible builds to go with, at least without the epic relics. So Gale Force, Scout, then round end, shuffle me back into your deck. This lets you get 2 attacks off, so you can summon 2 spiderlings. That's great. And then even though Elise will get recalled, you've then granted all your spiderlings Scout, which is massive. So that is very good. Then we have Voidborn Carapace Evolve, and when any unit dies, grant me its keywords. So the Evolve is fantastic because you can trigger this pretty easily. Give this over again to your spiderlings so they can get that extra 2/2 to get some more stats. Very good. And Dreams of Yordles, pretty much the best common relic for Elise, especially if you have her at 3 stars. So Spirit and Impact. Spirit gives you an extra 1/1, then Impact, when you strike while attacking, you deal 1 damage to the enemy nexus. Both these keywords can stack, so every time you attack with Elise, you're giving your spiderlings or granting them another stack of this. So with Gale Force and your 2 attacks, you're then giving all your units an extra 2/2 and 2 stacks of Impact. So this is absolutely fantastic. Now, some alternatives, especially if you don't have Elise at the 3 stars, Corrupted Star Fragment to be able to kill some of your supported units, further buff up your Elise and have her be more of your main win condition. This is pretty solid. And then Overwhelm can also be pretty good to be able to make sure your units can actually do that damage. With Elise, you're very much a early game champion where you're trying to rush down the enemies as fast as possible. So having that Overwhelm to be able to push extra damage earlier on can be quite helpful. Now, for common relics, I still think Dreams of Yordles is your best bet by far, but Chameleon's Necklace to make sure you can play your Elise round 1 is helpful. And then there's plenty of other good keyword relics in here that you could go for. And that is if you're at the 3 stars, you want to give these to your spiderlings. So if you want to give your spiderlings Quick Attack, Fearsome, Regen, Overwhelm just from this, there are different ways you can go with it. But Dreams of Yordles is just so good for Elise when you have her at that 3 stars. All right, next up we have Evelynn, and it's pretty simple and straightforward. These are pretty much the 3 rare relics you want to go with. And you can swap them out based on whatever you think is best for you and your playstyle. But Evelynn is able to level up multiple times in a single match, which is why these effects are so good for her. So Crown Guard Inheritance might level up Rally. You can do this like every single round, at least while Evelynn is on the board, so that's fantastic. Tempest Blade, when I level up Stun All Enemies. Again, being able to trigger this like every round, fantastic. And Deceiver's Crest, when I level up, create a copy of my champion spell in hand. It costs 0 this round. Now her champion spell, the Last Caress, Stop all enemy spells and skills targeting Evelynn, so this kind of works as a bit of a safety net for your Evelynn, and then she strikes an enemy, so it can also work as a bit of removal. So you can kind of choose which two of these you want to go for, and they're going to be better in different instances based on what you're going against, but these three as far as rare relics are pretty much the best there is for Evelynn. Now as far as common relics, you really want to go for the Chameleon's Necklace. Game start, create 2 copies of me in your deck. Evelynn is crucial to being able to win with Evelynn. This is one of, if not the most champ reliant deck in the game. If you don't draw your Evelynn, you're going to lose like almost all the time. You have to draw your Evelynn. You have to be able to play her as soon as possible. So Chameleon's Necklace, to get more copies of her, is so crucial. This is pretty much the only common relic you really want to go with. All right, Garen is up next, and he's another one that is pretty simple and straightforward. So normally for your rare relics, you just want to go for 2 strike relics. Garen has the level up of I've struck twice, so you can immediately trigger that as soon as you play him. Now when he levels, now round start rally. So you'll just be rallying every single round, being able to always attack. So super strong effect, and it's very easy to level him. So just going for 2 strike relics, very solid. Now it's actually decent to go for 1 of each. Sometimes when you play Garen, the enemy won't have 2 units. So having a Stalker's Blade and then a Gatebreaker to just make sure he's going to get that second hit off can be quite nice for you. Now, as far as some other rare relics to go with, if for some reason you don't want to go with these, Archangel Staff, not bad. Garen already is generating a 2-cost spell every single round, so having the mana to play that is solid. And then Crown Guard Inheritance might level up Rally. Being able to level him and then immediately attack again is pretty powerful, and as you can see, this is his kind of signature rare relic, so also a good alternative for you. Now, as far as common relics, Lost Chapter is decent. Play Refill Your Spell Mana, just to make sure you can play that 2-cost spell he's generating every round. Now with Garen though, and the other common relics, a lot of different flexibility you can go with, so going for like Troll King's Crusher for that overwhelm, decent. Going for Challenger or Quick Attack, also not bad. Chameleon's Necklace, gain more copies of Garen, also solid. Not quite as important as many other champions, because also Garen's champion spell isn't one you're really going to be playing very often, so extra copies of Garen are a little bit wasted, so that does definitely lose some value compared to many of the other champions we have mentioned. But also going for just like Rage Blade, be able to attack and give him some extra scaling, or just Dreams of Yordles, giving him some extra stats, and that impact he can actually trigger multiple times, because if he attacks while single combating, the 2-cost spell he generates, he can get that impact to go off multiple times. Or just going for like Banshee's Veil for Spell Shield. Really, all of the common relics are pretty useful on Garen, and it's really going to come down to how you want to be building your Garen. All right, next up we have Gnar. Now for Gnar, Dreadweight Chase Guns are absolutely fantastic. When I'm summoned, create 2 warning shots in hand. So there's warning shots, 0 cost, deal 1 to the enemy nexus. With Gnar, he's all about damaging the enemy nexus every single round. So having 2 free ways to do that is absolutely fantastic. You normally want to save these for those rounds where you normally can't damage the enemy nexus, so you can play this instead. Just make sure you're triggering your star powers. So warning shots, absolutely fantastic. The Bounty Hunter's Renown, I have 1/1 for every 200 gold you have. Gnar has a pretty weak stat line, so being able to scale him up through the course of an entire adventure is pretty solid. So Bounty Hunter's actually not bad. And then Scourge of Stash, Plunder, I cost 2 less. Also decent. With Gnar, since you are trying to hit the enemy nexus every single round, you have plenty of ways to trigger this Plunder effect. And then trying to get Gnar on the board a bit earlier can be pretty solid. As far as relics, I would normally stick with the Chase Gun. And then the other rare relic would really come down to your personal preference and how you want to build out your Gnar. As far as some other relics to just throw on your Gnar as well though, going for a stat relic to just boost up his stats a little bit more, not terrible. Also going for one of the relics that can actually buff up your whole board is pretty good. So either going for the Blade Rack so that allies have Challenger, or going for the Troll King's Crowns to give your allies Overwhelm. Both of these can be pretty good. With Gnar, you normally want to have as full of a board as possible. So being able to just focus on buffing up your entire board, not too bad either. Now, as far as common relics, again, pretty versatile champion. Banshee's Veil for the extra survivability, pretty good. Dreams of Yordles, also solid, giving you some extra stats and impact since Gnar wants both of those things. Really fantastic relic. Everfrost when someone's done the strongest enemy, Also something Gnar is all about is being able to control the board. So having the Everfrost for that extra bit of control, quite nice. Rageblade, again, for more scaling. Lost Chapter to immediately refill your spell mana. Gnar has a lot of spells that he's playing, so you're definitely going to get value out of this one. And then the last couple to mention, pretty much all of these are right here. So getting some more copies of your Gnar, solid. You want to be playing him early on. Challenger, be able to get that quick attack challenger combo, quite nice. Now Gnar can generate vulnerable, which kind of does the same thing as challenger, but it's a little bit less consistent. So if you want that really good quick attack challenger combo, can do that here. Overwhelm, also solid. Again, Gnar in his Mega Gnar can get Overwhelm, but if you want to have the consistency, also something you can go with. And then last up, Star Child Staff, game start, heal your Nexus 5. Similar to Darius, you want your units on the board getting buffed up, and you don't want your units dying. So sometimes not having your unit take a block and just taking the Nexus damage instead can be a good idea, but getting that extra bit of sustain can be quite nice. Now with Gnar, he is doing a lot in his kit, so there's a lot of different ways you can build him. Do really love the Dreadway chase guns, but he's really one to definitely play around with the different relics we suggested and find out how exactly you want to be building your Gnar. Although one last rare relic that I will recommend is Archangel Staff. Round start, refill your spell mana. Gnar does have a lot of spells to play, and he's actually generating spells every round as well. So while this is a little bit slower and not really the playstyle I go with Gnar, I know this is one that can actually be pretty helpful for you. All right, next up we have Gwen, and Gwen, kind of similar to Evelynn, has like a perfect relic or rare relic setup. You just have to pick 2 out of 3 that you want. So for Gwen, this is her best rare relic build in my opinion. All 3 of these are very good. I would recommend sticking with Crown Guard. This is the one you want to be holding on to, because this just lets you fairly consistently, like 9 times out of 10, end the game with your first attack with Gwen on the board. So that one is absolutely fantastic. Luden's Tempest, all of your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage. Very solid. She has a spell when she levels up, or well, a skill that drains health from the enemy nexus, and this scales off of how much power she has, but it does damage in increments of 1. So Luden's Tempest essentially doubles the damage of that skill. So very, very good. Then Troll King's Crown, allies have Overwhelm. Gwen is all about buffing up her attack stat, so making sure you can actually leverage that to deal damage to the enemy nexus and not get blocked is very important. So for Gwen, you really want to go for Crown Guard Inheritance and then choose one of these 2 relics. Now, if for some reason you don't have one of these 2, going for Corrupted Star Fragment is okay, but I would really stick with what we had before if you can. Now, for common relics, I think it's much closer than with a lot of other champions. With Gwen, you pretty much either want to go for Banshee's Veil to be able to have that extra layer of protection, and also just make sure you don't get shut down by like a Frostbite or a stun or something like that, since Gwen can very consistently just end as soon as you attack with her. So Banshee's Veil to protect her, very nice to have. Or just going for the Chameleon's Necklace. Game start, create 2 copies of me in your deck. You want to be playing Gwen as soon as you can, so making sure you have extra copies of her is fantastic. Then kind of the last setup I would recommend, if you don't want to run Troll King's Crown, you could get rid of this and then throw on Troll King's Crusher, since Gwen having Overwhelm is the most important part. And then you could throw on the Ludens to kind of have her best rare relic build a little bit earlier. Illaoi is up next, and it always is funny to me because Illaoi and Gwen actually have incredibly similar playstyles, and so it always makes me laugh that they're both right next to each other. So similar to Gwen, you want to keep your Crown Guard Inheritance because, like Gwen, with your first attack with Illaoi, you can normally level up Rally and then just end the game that round. So Crown Guard Inheritance, absolutely fantastic. As far as another rare relic to pair it with, Green Glade Shadeleaf support, grant my supported ally elusive. This can be really nice to be able to give your, or well, grant your tentacle that elusive so it can still strike through, not normally get blocked, and hit the enemy nexus. Illaoi herself has Overwhelm, so it's not as important for her to get Overwhelm or elusive because she can still hit the enemy nexus. As far as another rare relic, not one that I normally like to use, but you could go for Corrupted Star Fragment. Support, kill my supported ally, grant me its keywords and stats. You can use this to consume your tentacle to permanently give Illaoi all of those stats. This is definitely good if you think the enemy is going to be able to counter and kill your tentacle. So whether that's with like a Frostbite or something like that, this can be good, but normally I don't want to kill my own tentacle, but one that I thought was worth shouting out for you. Now, as far as common relics, Going for the quick attack to make sure Illaoi can get her strike off and not get hit back and potentially die. This is solid. Also, Banshee's Veil to give you that protection. Very good, because similar to Gwen, Illaoi is your win condition. You're going to be able to end the game normally with your first attack with her. You want to be sure you're not getting stunned, frostbitten, or killed. So having that spell shield for that protection, quite nice. And then Chameleon's Necklace, game start, create 2 copies from your deck, just to make sure you can try to play Illaoi as soon as you hit that 4 mana mark. Very good. And then her champion spell is also quite solid. All right, next up then we have Jack. And he's another one that you gotta just pick and choose whatever rare relics you want that work best for him. There's not necessarily one combo you have to go for. Up first, Stalker's Blade. When I'm summoned, I strike the weakest enemy. Jack has strike synergy, strike, create a coin in hand. So going for Stalker's Blade or Gatebreaker are solid. I normally prefer Stalker's Blade. Pretty simple and straightforward playstyle. Berserker's Buckle. When I survive damage, grant me 2/2. Jack is quite often getting strikes off, especially with the prize fights that he's able to generate, which him and another target, well, one of your targets and one of the enemy targets strike each other. Jack has a lot of ways to get hit, so being able to scale up off of those, quite nice. Archangel Staff, round start, refill your spell mana. This is a little bit better than it is for most other champions. For one, being able to have the extra mana is great, but Jack is all about refilling your mana, so having a way to do that every single round start is quite nice. Another rare relic, if you especially want to go for the Archangel Staff, Grand General's Counter Plan, to be able to generate another spell to play every round, gives you some removal, gives you some more coins to generate, and it is a pretty expensive spell, so having the extra mana to help mitigate that can be quite nice. Now, as far as common relics, could go for like the Armadillo Shell. That tough can really help you out. This is great if you're going to go for that like Berserker's Buckle. Spell Shield, decent, but not quite as important as some of the previous champions we just mentioned. Lost Chapter, this is actually fantastic. Play, refill your spell mana. This immediately triggers your star powers, and if you have them at 3 stars, you deal 1 damage when you refill your spell mana. So this kind of works like a Ravenous Hydra. When I'm summoned, deal 1 to all enemies, but it's also refilling your spell mana, so very good common relic to be able to throw on. Regen can also be decent, again, if you're trying to go for that scaling Berserker's Buckle sort of build. And then kind of as usual, Chameleon's Necklace, always a great option to throw on, just to get more copies of your champion. All right, Janna is up next, and she is an interesting one. You really actually like using a lot of epic relics on her, so while you're leveling her up, she does definitely feel a little bit weaker. So if you are leveling up Janna, do know that she is worth it in the end, but I definitely understand if you're feeling like she's a bit weak. As far as some rare relics to go with, Scourge of Stash, Plunder at cost 2 less. Very nice. Janna, your main win condition, you want to get her on the board as soon as possible. So having the cost reduction is good, but this also triggers your star powers that are all about playing cost reduce card. So any cost reduction you can get, like the Scourge Stash, excellent. Chemtech Duplicator, when you play a spell, if you have 6 or more mana gems, copy it with the same targets. This is one that, while you're leveling Janna, this often can be very good for you because she has a lot of spells, especially a lot of powerful removal spells. So this can really help you out. But if you're noticing with your Janna, you're ending games before this ever activates, then you want to throw this off. Chemtech is often a relic that can work as a bit of a crush to help you out early, but as you get better and better with the champion, as they get more powerful, you get to higher levels, you normally don't need it anymore. So for some like Janna and Nami, great while you're leveling, but normally when you're getting closer to max out, you don't actually need this. One other rare relic to throw on, Luden's Tempest, all of your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage. Janna does have a lot of removal spells, so making them all hit a little bit harder, actually pretty decent. And Janna is another one of those champions that there's not necessarily one set build to go with her, especially with rare relics. So kind of pick and choose however you want to build out your Janna. As far as common relics, Chameleon's Necklace is very good. You want to be playing your Janna as soon as possible. Her champion spell is excellent, so extra copies of her feel great and just very important to your win condition, so being able to play her is great. Banshee's Veil, giving her that extra bit of protection, also not bad. Lost Chapter, to be able to play spells with her right away, also pretty good. And then last up, Z-Drive Prototype, start adventures with 2 extra rerolls. Making sure your Janna can get the right powers is incredibly important. So if you get something like Spell Slinger, all your spells cost 1 less, or just any of the powers that give you cost reduction, drastically increase how powerful your Janna feels. So trying to get the right powers, very important. Jax is up next. He's kind of another pick and choose champion. based on whatever relics you think will work out best for him. There's not like one set combination you need to go with, but some good rare relics. Corrupted Star Fragment, support, kill my supported ally, grant me its keywords and stats. Great to just keep buffing up your Jax. Cheap champion, so you can get him on the board right away and just be scaling him up throughout the entire course of the game. So that's pretty good. You also have some synergy with killing your other units from your second star power. So this actually isn't too bad for you. Also, this can generate some very powerful keywords, such as like Scout, Bounty Hunter's Renown, also very good. Similar to Diana, you can just go the entire match with not taking any gold you have. That'll scale up your Jax, and so by the end, he's just going to be like one-shotting the enemy Nexus. So Bounty Hunter's Renown, another fun relic to be able to go with. Also, going for just a raw stat relic can be pretty good for your Jax. He starts out incredibly squishy. The enemy might just immediately like Mystic Shot and kill you. So having any amount of extra stats to just make sure he can stay on the board and start scaling is very good. So just throwing on a stat relic, actually not a bad idea. But then going for like Crown Guard or even Gale Force. Now these are going to be a little bit situational, especially Gale Force, but against some opponents you can just end turn 1 with Jax. So if you can do that, then Gale Force is going to be a great option for you. But if you think they're going to be able to keep you from attacking, or you just don't think you're going to end, then you don't want to use Gale Force. But that Scout, incredibly powerful to get. Also, Crown Guard Inheritance when I level up Rally. Jax is a very aggressive champion. You want to be keeping the pressure on the enemy. So being able to attack, rally, and then attack again is incredibly good. With Jax, his level condition is while you're attacking. Equipped allies have attacked with 16 or more total power. So you can normally just do back-to-back attack, which can often end the game. So Crown Guard, another great rare relic for you to play with. And then last up is kind of the two support relics. So either going for Blade Rack and potentially also pairing that with Troll King's Crown. Allies have Overwhelm. With Jax, you don't mind having a bit of a bigger board. So making sure all your units have these extra keywords actually does feel pretty good, especially if you want to have your Jax be a little bit more of a supportive play style and not just focus on Jax as your main win condition, even though that is kind of the more preferred play style for most people. As far as common relics, going for Challenger, Jax does get quick attack from his equipment, so having that quick attack Challenger combo, very nice. Rage Blade, also very good with Jax. You want to have him on the board and attacking as much as possible, so being able to further his scaling with Rage Blade, very good for you. And then going for Dreams of Yordles for just flat stats, so he's less likely to immediately die. Not bad. Spell Shield, again, decent to keep him from getting sniped by like a Mystic Shot. And then last up, Chameleon's Necklace. He is a 2-cost champion. You want to play him right away. Having extra copies of him is great. And then his champion spell is also pretty good, so having more copies of him, not bad. All right, next up then we have Jhin, and this is actually a combo that you want to keep together. You don't want to break this up at all, and you want to keep it in this order. So you want to have your Gatebreaker, play I Strike the Enemy Nexus, and then Riptide Battery, Plunder, play Cannon Barrage a number of times equal to my cost. Now, since this is a Plunder effect, it needs you to have hit the enemy Nexus. If you have Gatebreaker going off first, so if you have it in this exact order, your Gatebreaker will hit the Nexus, trigger this Plunder, and then these Cannon Barrages will go off. Now, these Cannon Barrages are a skill. For Jhin, a lot of his effects all scale off of you playing skills. So being able to immediately play 4 skills will give you a good amount of your level up condition, trigger your star powers, and is overall just an incredibly powerful effect. So this is a great combo to just put together. Later on, when you hit level 30 and you have 3 rare relics, throwing on another Riptide Battery down here is incredible. As far as some other relics though, Archangel Staff, especially if you don't have Jhin at 3 stars, this can be very nice to really help you play a lot of the spells you have and the spells you generate. Once you hit 3 stars though, not really as needed. Crown Guard Inheritance, when I level up Rally, this can be very good and actually can pair together with Tempest Blade. So if you want another wombo combo of relics to keep together, that would be this right here. When I level up Stun all enemies, when I level up Rally, Jhin has a powerful attack, especially when he is leveled, deal 4 to all stunned enemies in the enemy Nexus. So being able to have him level and then immediately attack and pretty much nuke the entire enemy board is very, very good. Now, as far as some common relics to go with, kind of the best on most champions, Chameleon's Necklace, just to make sure you are being able to play your Jhin, very good. Lost Chapter, if you don't have him at 3 stars, this will be very good for you. If you do have him at 3 stars, not as needed. Everfrost, when I'm summoned, I stun the strongest enemy. Jhin does have pretty good stun synergy, so this isn't bad for you. and then Banshee's Veil just to give you that extra bit of protection. Always nice. Next up, we have Jinx, and this is another relic combo that you actually want to keep together, not just pick and choose the couple rare relics. Loose Cannon's Payload, absolutely fantastic for your Jinx. When I'm summoned, discard your hand, then create that many Pow Pows. So 2 cost, deal 3 to an enemy unit, and burst. This is actually goes down to a 1 cost in your starting deck, and this is incredibly good for 1, since it discards your entire hand. You then immediately level up your Jinx. Discarding your hand triggers your star power, so it like nukes the enemy board. And then since you're leveled, you generate a super mega death rocket from Jinx. You also generate one from your second star powers. So in addition to making all these Pow Pows, you're also making these 2 rockets to again nuke the enemy nexus and the entire enemy board. Very, very good. Best rare relic for Jinx, and just kind of best relic in general for Jinx. So definitely want to have this if you can. Pairing that with the Scourge's Stash, not bad. Plunderite costs 2 less. That way you can just get Jinx on the board earlier, trigger this effect as soon as possible. And as far as a common relic, Lost Chapter, play refill your spell mana. This is very good because if you have the Loose Cannon's Payload, you're making 2 of these super mega death rockets when you play Jinx. These are still going to cost 1 each, so you want to be sure you have that 2 extra mana to be able to play them. So Lost Chapter, absolutely fantastic. Now this isn't needed later if you get Jinx to your 4-star, but I'm not expecting you to have that while you're leveling up your Jinx. Now some other relics you can go with. If you want, you could throw like Dreadweight Chase Gun above your Loose Cannon's Payload. So it gives you 2 extra cards in your hand, which then get discarded. So it's doing more damage from the discarding, and then it's giving you more Pow Pows to play. So another decent rare relic to pair with this. Now, if you don't have Loose Cannon's Payload, going for something like Riptide Battery, decent, because with Jinx, it's very easy to play or trigger your Plunder effects. And then just dealing some extra damage from these cannon barrages, not bad. Or just going for something simple like Stalker's Blade of taking out an enemy unit when you play your Jinx. Obviously not as good as the first combos we showed off, but some alternatives if you aren't able to do those. Again, Lost Chapter, great to have. Banshee's Veil, not bad for some added protection, but also just going for Chameleon's Necklace as normal. Pretty good to get more copies of your Jinx, and if you get more copies of your Champion Spell, not bad either. All right, next up we have Kai'Sa, and for Kai'Sa, I think it's pretty simple and straightforward. Going for Blade Rack as well as Troll King's Crown is very good. These are strong effects to give all of your units, but for Kai'Sa and her second star power, if your units have at least 3 keywords, they get an extra boost in stats. So making sure all your units have at minimum 2 so you can get those extra stats is quite nice. So this is really what I go for as far as rare relics. Now, if you need to swap them out, going for a Luden's Tempest, all of your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage. Similar to Gwen, Kai'Sa has a skill when she's leveled that deals damage in increments of 1. And so Luden's Tempest doubles the damage of that skill, which is quite powerful. So if you can't go for the Blade Rack, Troll King's Crown, throwing on Luden's Tempest isn't bad. As far as common relics, I really like Dreams of Yordles. Kai'Sa is all about getting keywords, so being able to have 2 extra keywords on your Kai'Sa pretty much guarantees that when she levels, she is going to be able to trigger that evolve and level up. So this is really the best. If you don't have this, you can kind of pick and choose any of the keyword ones that you want, such as like Tough, Spell Shield, Fearsome, Quick Attack. Any of those can be fine for you because you just want to get as many keywords as possible. Now, I will say you are able to get some of these keywords from your starting deck, especially like Spell Shield. So even though Spell Shield's good, probably want to go for something that you're less likely to get from your units, such as like a Regen or a Tough. In general, though, Dreams of Yordles, absolutely fantastic for your Kai'Sa. Next up, then, we have Kayn, and I think pretty similar to Garen, you really just want to go for double strike relics, and for Kayn, you really want to go for double Stalker's Blades. So he has a level condition of I've struck twice. When I level up, recall me. So you play Kayn, he gets 2 strikes off, he gets recalled. You then are able to play him as a 0 cost. He becomes Rost, and then he gets those 2 strikes off again. And if he's able to kill units with these strikes, he is able to scale up. So double Stalker's Blades, really the way to go for your Kayn if you can use it. And then for Kayn, he has a really weak attack stat, so being able to buff that up at all is fantastic. So with your common relic, going for Dreams of Yordles or even the Soul Spear for the extra 1 damage really is good, just to try to make sure you're getting kills with your strikes for Kayn. So one of these 2 common relics, absolutely fantastic. Now, if you don't have double Stalker's Blade, swapping out one of them for a Gatebreaker can be okay to still immediately level when you play your Kayn. It's so powerful. You really want to be going for double strike relics if you can. Now, if you're not able to do that, going for like Berserker's Buckle, when I survive damage, grant me 2/2. Not bad. He is normally going to be taking a lot of hits, especially when you transform him into Rost. So that is okay. And then also going for maybe a Blade Rack to give all of your units Challenger, just to make sure they can all get the best trades. Also not bad. Or again, just going for a flat stat relic like the Fist or the Warhammer. Also pretty good. But again, you really want to go for strike relics if you can. Next up then, we have Kindred, and Kindred is a very interesting one. There's a lot of different ways you can go with them. So for one, you can go for Stalker's Blade. When I'm summoned, I strike the weakest enemy. Being able to try to immediately get a kill so you can trigger your mark so you can kill another unit is pretty good. Going for Corrupted Star Fragment, support, kill my supported ally, grant me its keywords and stats. Again, since you're killing a unit, you then trigger a mark even if you're killing one of your own units. So this is really good. Also great to just further scale up your Kindred. So if you want to focus on buffing up your Kindred, have them being scaling throughout the game, going for these two together, pretty solid. But with the Guardian Angel, some interesting things you can do. So start adventures with 1+ revive, that's handy. Last breath, if it's the first time I've been slaying this game, revive me with 1 health. Now Kindred, you can actually kill yourself with the Spirit's Journey. This is your champion spell, and you also generate this from your 2nd star power. Kill a unit, then revive it, and then since this is a champion spell, create a Kindred in your deck. So you can use this to kill your own Kindred, trigger your Guardian Angel, so that this revives you with 1 health, but then you also have another copy that got revived from your Spirit Journey. So essentially you're printing multiple copies of your Kindred. So this can be very good with on summon effects. So you can pair these two together so that every time you're summoning your Kindred, they're getting these strikes off. This can be very good for you. Now, your Kindred isn't going to be able to level since you're constantly killing them. So there is a bit of a trade-off, but this can be incredibly powerful. And you could pair this with a Everfrost. When I'm summoned, I stun the strongest enemy. So you can kill your own copy of Kindred. And then since you're going to have 2 copies that are both being resummoned, one from the Guardian Angel and one from the Spirit Journey, by playing this one spell, you're getting 2 strikes on the weakest enemy, and you're stunning the 2 strongest enemies. So this is actually a very powerful combination you can use for your Kindred. But again, if you do want to go for this sort of build, going for a Corrupted Star Fragment also works out pretty well. If you're trying to go for that sort of scaling build, then going for like a Rage Blade or Dreams, or probably actually would be the best, would be the Banshee's Veil, just to protect your Kindred since you don't want to lose all those extra stats. This could also be decent with that Corrupted Star Fragment, but I'd highly recommend trying out this build first. I think it is a lot of fun, very interesting, and a great time. All right, next up we have Leblanc, and first off, I just want to say Leblanc is a very versatile champion. There's a ton of different ways you can play her, and she can pretty much make use of just about every relic in the game, so definitely experiment. But as far as kind of the best builds that I would recommend, going for either like double Stalker's Blade or double Guardian Orb is very, very good. With LeBlanc, you're able to summon her many times through the course of a game, so triggering these summon effects is very, very good. So Stalker's Blade, when I'm summoned, I strike the weakest enemy. This going off every time you summon your LeBlanc gives you absolutely amazing removal. Going for double Stalker's Blade can be great, or Stalker's Blade plus a stat relic, such as like a Warhammer. That can be okay, helps you level up a bit faster. But also going for especially 2 Guardian Orbs. Normally I don't really like just having 1 Guardian Orb, but having at least 2 of them, so every time you summon your LeBlanc, you're granting epic items to random cards in your deck. This is very good, gives you much more random but crazy scaling sort of playstyle. Very, very fun. And then last up, for common relics, when I'm summoned, stun the strongest enemy. Since you are summoning so many copies of LeBlanc, getting these extra stuns going off is very, very good for you. But if you don't want to go for these, Chameleon's Necklace, to make sure you play in your LeBlanc as soon as possible, and leveling her up is very good. She is just a 3-cost champion. You want to be playing her in that early game so you can immediately level and then start summoning just a whole bunch of extra copies of LeBlanc. Next up then, we have Lee Sin. Now, for Lee Sin, he's a champion that has a lot of weaknesses you try to fill in with relics, but you're not able to get them all. It's kind of like one of those memes online that gives you like 3 things you want, but you only get to pick 2. That's kind of how it feels for Lee Sin. So one of the rare relics that works out pretty well for you, Chemtech Duplicator. When you play a spell, if you have 6 or more mana gems copied with the same targets, this makes Lee Sin feel absolutely fantastic. but it takes a while to get there since you do have to wait for those 6 or more mana gems. Grand General's counter plan, round start, create a fleeting copy of me in hand. Not bad. His champion spell gives you essentially 2 spells, and they are pretty strong, so that is a decent one. Going for Dreadway Chase Guns, when him summon, create 2 warning shots in hand. Not bad, just to get 2 more spell triggers so you can try to buff up your Lee Sin a little bit more. Hymn of Valor, when him summon, create a redoubled Valor in hand. Fully heal an ally and double its power and health. This can be pretty fun, especially if you want to like pair these together and then throw on a Lost Chapter. So you can play Lee Sin as if you're over 6 mana gems. He refills your mana, you can play a redoubled Valor, buff him up to a ridiculous level. Can be a pretty fun combo, but again, you can only really do this once you get to like the 6 mana mark, so pretty late into the game. But another relic to go with, Troll King's Crown. Lee Sin really likes having his Overwhelm, so when he levels, I Dragon Rage enemies that I challenge. So Dragon's Rage is him kicking and recalling an enemy. So he kicks the enemy into the Nexus, striking it, so hitting the Nexus for his power, and then the enemy gets recalled. Now, if Lee Sin doesn't have Overwhelm, that's it. His attack is over. It fizzles because the unit he was attacking is now gone. If he has Overwhelm, though, he'll actually still be able to attack and hit the Nexus. So essentially, he gets to hit the enemy Nexus twice if he has Overwhelm, so it kind of gives you double attack. So Overwhelm, very good. Getting it right here, not bad, but you can also get this from your common relics. So having Overwhelm is most important on Lee Sin. So being able to get rid of the Troll King's Crown and just do it right here is also not bad. All right, Leona is up next. Now for Leona, Chemtech Duplicator, pretty good. When you play a spell, if you have 6 or more mana gems, copy it with the same targets. The main spell you're going to be using that with is her Morning Light. Give allies 1/1 this round, so buffs up your entire board. Activate an ally's Daybreak effect. Now, the reason this is so good, for one, Leona is a 5 cost, so normally you're playing her for 5, next round Chemtech Duplicator is active. But with Leona, you have this Sunhawk, so Daybreak, stun the strongest enemy. With her champion spell, you can activate an ally's Daybreak effect. So you can normally have the bird on the board, you play one of these Daybreaks, or one of these Morning Lights on the bird, and you actually generate these when you level up a champion, which you can normally do with Leona because you can normally activate Daybreak every single round. She has the effect of you've activated Daybreak 5 times. She's a 5-cost champion, so pretty much when you level her, she is leveled or about to be. And then when you level, you make this Morning Light, so you can have Leona on the board and leveled. She has the effect when she's leveled, Daybreak, or when you activate another Daybreak, stun the strongest enemy, give me barrier this round. So you cast this Morning Light on the bird, it activates its Daybreak effect to stun the strongest enemy. Leona activates her Daybreak effect to stun the strongest enemy, and these will not just keep stunning the same target, they'll just like work down the enemy line. But since you're at 6 mana and you have Chemtech Duplicator, it then goes off again, so the bird again stuns the strongest enemy, and then Leona does it as well. So essentially, with this one relic, you can play a single spell and then stun 4 of the enemy's strongest units. So this gives you a absolutely ridiculous amount of control. And remember, every time this is going off, you're also buffing your entire board. So pretty fun to go with. Crown Guard Inheritance when I level up Rally. Normally when you play Leona or the round after, she levels, so being able to just immediately put that pressure on, pretty good. Another great relic to go with, though, is the Counter Plan. Round start, create a fleeting copy of me in hand, which again is just another one of these Morning Lights, just to make sure you have that in your hand. Very good for you. Or if you wanted, you could go for a level up build where you went for Deceiver's Crest, as well as the Crown Guard Inheritance. So pretty much when you play Leona or the round after, she levels up, giving you a rally so you can immediately attack. She also creates a 0-cost champion spell, which is that Morning Light, so you can immediately play that round. With her second star powers, when she levels, she creates another one of these Morning Lights that you can also play. So if you don't need that crazy level of control and scaling that you need from the Chemtech Duplicator, you just want to end games a lot faster, here's a pretty good combo you can go with. Now, for the rare relics, yep, going for more copies of Leona is pretty good because you want to be able to play her, and then having more copies of her for a champion spell is excellent. Also going for Everfrost, we have extra layers of control, not bad. And then Banshee's Veil, also solid, just to make sure your Leona doesn't get taken off the board. All right, Lillia is up next, and she's actually very similar to some of the other champions, such as Leblanc, where you're all about these summon effects. So Guardian Orb, when I'm summoned, grant epic items to 3 random cards in your deck. pretty solid since you're going to be trying to resummon Lillia over and over again. So this is just great for being able to scale up your entire deck. Stalker's Blade, when I'm summoned, I strike the weakest enemy. Also solid to be able to get a lot of removal. Now, I would recommend either going for double Guardian Orb or double Stalker's Blade. I normally find that's better, just focus on either having great scaling from Guardian Orb or great removal from Stalker's Blade. I personally don't really like splitting it, so while I'm showing them both here, I would try to double up on either of these if you can. And then as far as the common relic, Everfrost is fantastic, gives you great amounts of control, since every time you summon your Lillia, which is normally actually at the start of the round, she is then stunning the strongest enemy. Very, very good, gives you tons of control. Now, if you don't want to go for this sort of summon type build, going for an Archangel Staff to be able to play some of the spells you're generating every round is decent. You are generating spells from your second star power. Flat stat relics are okay to just try to boost her up a little bit more. Corrupted Star Fragment can be decent to again give you a lot of decent scaling. In general though, I'd really just stick with the Stalker's Blades or Guardian Orbs. And while Everfrost is fantastic, going for the Banshee's Veil for the protection is okay, or Lost Chapter is, again, decent, but really you will probably want to stick with Everfrost, or depending on what you're going up against, Ravenous Hydra could be pretty fun if you wanted to, again, focus on a lot of removal over control. All right, next up we have Lux, and with Lux there's several very good relics you want to be grabbing, but you won't be able to choose all of them. So we'll just highlight the ones here for you, and then you can kind of select which ones you want to put together. So up first, Arcane Comet, round start, create a fleeting Falling Comet in hand. So 6 cost, obliterate a unit or landmark. Great for triggering your star powers and level up condition of just playing 6 mana. And this gives you great removal because it's making that Arcane Comet to obliterate a unit. And then Lux is also making her final spark. So that one's solid. Archangel Staff, round start, refill your spell mana. Being able to have that extra 3 mana to play your 6 cost spells, quite handy. Chemtech Duplicator. When you play a spell, if you have 6 or more mana gems, copy it with the same targets. Really good for getting Lux on the board at that 5 mana mark. Then at 6 mana, all of your spells are just going off multiple times, especially because when you're playing these 6 costs, since they're going off twice, Lux is then making 2 final sparks. Each one of those final sparks also going off twice. And then the rally spell, you're getting 2 of those as well every time one of these is going off. So Chemtech Duplicator, also pretty solid and crazy. And then one last relic I actually like to use is the Scourge's Stash. Being able to try to get Lux on the board a little bit earlier. This is very good, especially if you want to pair with some of the other round start effects, such as like Archangel Staff or Arcane Comet. That way these are going off earlier rounds, you're getting more value from them. So Scourge's Stash is also pretty solid. As far as common relics, going for Banshee's Veil for protection, not bad. Lost Chapter, pretty good to try to immediately refill your spell mana so you can try to play another spell, or go for the Chameleon's Necklace, try to make sure you can play your Lux. Now, all of this, though, has been with the thought of wanting to play your Lux. But Lux's deck and star powers are actually very good and don't actually need Lux to be on the board. So you actually can completely ignore Lux if you want and just go for kind of a more passive build. For one, you can just throw on a bunch of Z-Drive prototypes, start adventures with 2+ rerolls. Getting the correct powers for Lux is an incredible boost to your strength. So making sure you have the rerolls to be able to get those powers, quite handy. So honestly, just going for like triple prototype wouldn't be a bad idea. If you needed to, if you were struggling, you could also go for some Starchild Staff, getting that extra sustain. Or if you noticed you were able to clear the encounters without really taking any damage, you could actually throw on the Card Master's Gambit, 1/1, and when you win an encounter without taking any Nexus damage, earn 1 reroll. You can do this pretty consistently with Lux, so you could throw on a couple of these, and you won't have as many prototypes up front, but this will generate way more for you throughout the course of a game. So getting those extra rerolls, actually pretty good for your Lux, and just going for a full passive build where you really don't need to play your Lux at all in order to win is actually also very valid. All right, next up then we have Lux Illuminated, and fairly similar to like Gwen or Illaoi. I think Crown Guard Inheritance is a must, and then the other relics are kind of just trying to choose the best option for you. So you want to stick with Crown Guard when in level up rally. This normally lets you put on a ton of pressure early and end games very quickly. Troll King's Crown allies have Overwhelm. Again, very good for just helping you end as soon as possible. That way, even if you get blocked, you're still able to punch through, hit the enemy nexus, and often end the game. So Troll King's Crown, very nice to just give your whole board that overwhelm. Deceiver's Crest, also very solid. When I level up, create a copy of my champion spell in hand. It costs 0 this round. So her champion spell boosts all the units, but when she's leveled, when an ally gains spirit, it gains it again. So by boosting all of your units, since they all have spirit, you're then giving them more spirit, but since she's leveled from, this is only happening when she's leveled, it's essentially doubling that spirit. So you're giving your units massive amounts of stats, which is very, very good. And then also giving them that spirit and impact. So very good for, again, being able to immediately just rush down the enemy. Works out great with that Crown Guard inheritance. And then one other relic to highlight is Greenglade Shadeleaf. Support, grant my supported ally elusive. Now, Lux is already a support-focused champion and deck. You want to be using this already. And the reason this is so good, though, for one, it's a grant, so it's a permanent buff. But then two, this is so good because of a different card in your deck. So in your deck, you have the Luminos Sprite. Support, give my supported ally, I believe it's supposed to say all of my positive keywords and the stacks this round. So whatever keywords this has, the other unit it's supporting is also going to have that. So by using Lux and then supporting this card and granting it that elusive from the Shadeleaf, you're not only giving it elusive, it's then giving another unit elusive. So another great way to just slip by the enemies and try to end the game very, very quickly. Another solid relic for you to use. As far as common relics, going for the Lost Chapter to get that spell mana. You're having a lot of spells to play. You're generating spells actually every round from your second star power. So you'll always have something to play. So having the Lost Chapter is very solid for that. And then as normal, going for the Banshee's Veil for the spell shield. Not bad. Normally Lux, at least when she's attacking, is going to have barrier. So she will have some amount of protection. But also going for like Dreams of Yordles, Spirit and Impact. Great, especially try to trigger your level up a little bit faster. But as always, going for Chameleon's Necklace, also very good, just to get extra copies of Lux so you can be sure to play her right away. Next up then, we have Master Yi, and this is actually more of a combination that you want to stick together, at least the Archangel Staff and the Grand General's counter plan. Now for Master Yi, he already has a lot of round start effects, so you have great synergy there with having a lot of these trigger at the start of the round. Being sure you have the extra mana to be able to play your spells, very good. Master Yi is based around this flow effect, which is all about playing 2 spells in a round. So making sure you can always do that is very good. His champion spell, also excellent. That's giving you the Wuju style, which you play this and it makes him meditate. Together, this is obviously going to cost 3 mana, which you're getting from your Archangel Staff. So these together make sure you're always able to activate that flow effect, which can be quite helpful for you. As far as the common relic to pair it with, Lost Chapter, not bad in order to play Master Yi in the first turn, and potentially, as long as you have the spells, which you often will, but it's not guaranteed, but you'll often have the spells to immediately play and get your flow effect off in the very first round. So Lost Chapter, pretty solid right there. Really though, as per usual for most champions, Chameleon's Necklace is probably the best bet. For one, he's a 2 cost, so you want to be playing him at the start of the game. Having more copies of him makes that more likely to happen. Also with Master Yi, he has an incredibly good champion spell, so getting more copies of this is excellent. So Chameleon's Necklace, generally the way to go for Master Yi. Now, if you don't want to go for this sort of setup, going for something like Allies Having Overwhelm, not too bad. Not normally as needed since you're able to get elusive on your units, but still decent. And then another fun one you can go with is the Hymn of Valor. When I'm summoned, create a redoubled Valor in hand. It costs 3 less, so it's a little bit easier to play this. Fully heal an ally, then double its power and health. With Master Yi, you are scaling him up. As you see right here, grant all allied Master Yis everywhere 2 power. This is a round start effect as long as you got your flow off. And then also normally Master Yi, you're able to buff him up a bunch with a bunch of temporary power from his different combat tricks. But the Hymn of Valor doesn't know those stats are temporary. It's still going to buff you up based on those stats. Now, you'll still lose those temporary stats at the end of the round, but redoubled Valor would have already buffed you up to make you absolutely massive. So a pretty fun thing you can do to just get a giant Master Yi. Again, I don't think this is as good as your Grand General's counter plan, but can be a fun thing to play around with if you want. Last up though is Crown Guard Inheritance when I level up Rally. With Master Yi, his effect is allied Master Yis have dealt 12 damage, so that's very easy to trigger your level up when you want, and it's normally going to be when you're attacking or when you're blocking. So being able to attack, level, immediately attack again is very good. or to be able to block, level, and then immediately attack your enemy. Both of those very good, able to put a ton of pressure on the enemy, and if not end the game outright, end it shortly thereafter. So if you want to go for more of an aggressive build, going for the Crown Guard isn't too bad. Next up, we have Misfortune, and kind of similar to Kindred, there's some very different branching ways or branching paths you can choose for Misfortune, how you want to play her. For one, Corrupted Star Fragment, support, kill my support ally, grant me its keywords and stats. Great, you have tons of units you're able to kill, including those powder monkeys you're making every round. You don't feel bad about killing your own units and scaling up your Misfortune. Not bad, so this is great if you just want to focus on her, but also going for like a Blade Rack or the Troll King's Crown for Overwhelm to buff up your units, since you're often going to have pretty close to a full board. Making sure they all get the best trades to do as much damage as possible is pretty solid, so if you want to go for a little bit more of a supportive build, you can. Luden's Tempest, though, all of your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage. For Misfortune and her minions, they all do damage in increments of 1. It's like Misfortune, when you attack, deal 1 to all battling enemies in the enemy nexus. Luden's Tempest, just adding 1 extra damage is then doubling that damage. When Misfortune levels, when allies attack, deal 1 damage 3 times to all battling enemies in the enemy nexus. So again, you're doubling that damage. Now you're doing essentially 6 damage instead of just 3. Misfortunes Make It Rain, deal 1 damage to 3 different enemies. Luden's Tempest essentially doubles that as well. So throwing out a Luden's Tempest to double all the damage of your spells and skills can be pretty good. And you can actually pair that with a Grand General's Counter Plan, so that every round you're getting another copy of this Make It Rain. So if you want to focus on more of a gunslinger build and just be focusing on your spells and skills, this is a decent way to go. But you can also go for like Corrupted Star Fragment, just be focusing on your Misfortune, or also going for like Blade Rack, Troll King's Crown, and focusing on supporting your entire board. A lot of different ways you can play Misfortune. Now, as far as common relics, again, a lot of ways you can play Misfortune. If you want to go for just removal and trying to damage all enemy units, could go for Ravenous Hydra, just hitting the entire enemy board for damage. If you're focusing on your spells, going for Lost Chapters, you can immediately play one as soon as you play Misfortune. If you're thinking about scaling with like Corrupted Star Fragment, you can go for like Rage Blade, so when you attack, you keep scaling up. But if you want to get some protection, Banshee's Veil with Spell Shield's not bad. Dreams of Yordles for further scaling, also decent. But there's also plenty of keywords that are also good for you. So going for the quick attack, so you can actually get a attack in and not worry about getting hit back, also solid. In general, though, I would always recommend Chameleon's Necklace, just so that you're getting more copies of Misfortune, so you can try to play her, and then getting extra copies of her champion spell. Not too bad for you. Next up, then, we have Mordekaiser, and with most champions, or a lot of champions, there's a lot of different ways you can approach them. With Mordekaiser, though, it's a little bit more set in stone what just the best options for. For one, Corrupted Star Fragment, pretty much the best common relic in most situations. Support, kill my support ally, grant me its keywords and stats. Now, that's the same effect that everyone has for Corrupted Star Fragment, and it's great. But with Mordekaiser, he has the effect that when you slay another ally, revive it. So here, you're getting the benefit of killing your own unit, which you have extra benefit from with Shadow Isles because you want your units to die. But then, since you're killing it, you also then revive it. So this is actually very good for your Mordekaiser. You're killing your own units, but then reviving them. You're just getting nothing but benefits. There's no downside to this really at all. So this is absolutely fantastic for you. Wicked Harvest, play, deal 3 to all other units. Again, this is great because this will kill most of your board. But since you are the one killing them, you're then going to revive them all. This is helping you level up a lot faster. And from your star powers, when your units are revived, they're getting extra power and overwhelm. So if this kills your own units, nothing but positive. If this kills enemy units, fantastic, you're clearing the enemy board. So as far as rare relics, both of these are absolutely fantastic for you. Now, another relic that can be pretty fun for you, Guardian Angel. You get that extra revive, last breath. If it's the first time I've been slaying this game, revive me with 1 health. For one, you have other ways you can revive Mordekaiser, so potentially he dies and then you get 2 copies of him. So if the enemy tries to kill you, they're going to have a hard time. But you also have the effect of killing your own Mordekaiser, so you can actually trigger this yourself if you want. So while I don't think it's as good as the other rare relics we've showcased, it is also pretty solid for you. Blade Rack, not bad. Allies have Challenger. Your units are already able to get overwhelmed from your star powers, but making sure they're all getting the best possible trades is also pretty good. And then the last one that is a little bit trolly but pretty hilarious is the Deceiver's Crest. When I level up, create a copy of my champion spell in hand, it costs 0 this round. Now for one, Mordekaiser can often take a little bit to level. Fairly often you might actually end the game first, but his champion spell is pretty hilarious. So it's normally a 10 cost, and it's Mordekaiser's Realm of Death. An ally starts a free attack challenging the strongest enemy, kill all other units. So you're clearing the entire enemy board except for their strongest unit, and while you're technically killing all of your units, remember, since you have Mordekaiser, when you slay another ally, revive it. So as long as Mordekaiser is the one challenging the enemy unit, your whole board, even though they're dying, are all getting revived. So you're pretty much reviving your whole board and then nuking the entire enemy board. So very fun card to play with. Again, not necessarily the best, because often you can end with Mordekaiser before he levels, or if he levels, it might be sometimes you don't want to play this, but it is a very fun card and definitely one you should check out. Now, as far as some common relics, going for Star Child Staff to get that extra bit of sustain is pretty good. Mordekaiser isn't necessarily the best champion. He's one of my favorites, but you might end up getting poked out, and so getting some extra sustain can be pretty good for you. You normally don't need the Chameleon's Necklace. For one, Mordekaiser is pretty expensive, so it's going to be a while before you play him. And then his champion spell being a 10 cost, you're normally not going to be able to play it, so having extra copies of him doesn't really help. So Chameleon's Necklace, not actually as important as many other champions. So really going for Star Child Staff is quite helpful. And then Banshee's Veil for the extra protection, not bad. Next up we have then Morgana. And this is one of those relic combos that you probably just want to stick with, and we're not going to give you a bunch of options of rare relics to kind of choose from. So here, Grand General's Counterplan, round start, create a fleeting copy of me in hand. So that is your Dark Binding. Stun an enemy, curse it with Shackles. This is absolutely fantastic. Also, this gets Invoke on it, so you're able to generate more cards every time you play this. Very good for Morgana, gives you a ton of control. This is a 3 cost, so pairing it with that Archangel Staff so you always have the mana to play it is absolutely fantastic. This is really your go-to and what you want to be using with your rare relic slots with Morgana. As far as the common slot, Chameleon's Necklace, pretty straightforward. You want to be playing Morgana as soon as possible. You want to make sure you have her, and extra copies of her just turn into her champion spell, which you want more copies of anyways, so that is not bad at all. If you don't want to go for that though, Z-Drive Prototype, making sure you get the right powers, very helpful for you, so that is pretty good. Or going for like a Banshee's Veil, just to protect your Morgana, also not bad. Now, if you don't like this build, going for the Scourge's Stash to try to get her on the board a little bit earlier, not too terrible. Or if you want, you could also go for Corrupted Star Fragment to just further buff her up. She is a lifesteal unit. Lifesteal is incredibly powerful, so buffing her up and making her more powerful, not too bad. Again though, I would go for the original build. Alright, Nami is up next, and first off we have Chemtech Duplicator. Now, similar to Janna, this is absolutely fantastic while you're leveling up Nami, because you're normally going to be triggering it. But as you get better with Nami, as she levels up and you get closer to maxed out, you're normally going to be ending games well before this activates, so just be paying attention, and once you start ending games consistently before this ever turns on, it's time to get rid of it. But until that happens, Chemtech Duplicator, doubling all your spells and skills when you get to 6 mana, absolutely fantastic, really helps you close out games for your Nami. Grand General's Counterplan, round start, create a fleeting copy of me in hand, so since you're already having Nami on the board, gives you her Ebb, which can give you Flow, which then gives you Ebb and Flow. Very, very good with Nami. You want to be spamming a ton of spells, so essentially having 3 spells you're generating every round start. Amazing. Dreadweight Chase Gun, when I'm summoned, create 2 warning shots in hand. These aren't bad, they're free spells you can play. And with Nami, every time you play a spell, you refill 1 spell mana. So essentially, you're not only playing this for free, you're getting 1 spell mana back by playing this. So if you want to go for some of those longer combos, getting these warning shots to help you play some more spells and actually be going positive with your mana, this can actually be pretty good for that right here. Now, note with Nami, you don't actually want to be getting effects for spell mana like Archangel Staff. Normally, you end up wasting a lot of the spell mana it's trying to generate, so you don't actually need to be focusing on stuff like that, but just having the Grand General's Counterplan is very good. Chemtech Duplicator, also very solid. And eventually, you're actually able to end games within like the first 1 to 2 rounds. So going for the Deceiver's Crest as kind of the better version of the Grand General's Counterplan actually works out, because you can level up Nami in a single round. You then make a 0 cost copy of your champion spell, so you can then immediately play this and then get the other 2. Now, you will still have to spend the mana for these two, but it's kind of a better way to get more cards to play. So just note, if you're ending games fast enough, Deceiver's Crest can be an alternative to the Grand General's counter plan. And then last up, if you're trying to support your board a little bit more, just giving everyone Overwhelm can be solid. Normally, your units are going to have very high attack pools. Making sure that's not getting wasted is also pretty good. As far as common relics, you generally just want to go for Chameleon's Necklace. You want to get more copies of Nami. You want to get her on the board as soon as possible, and you want to get as many copies of her champion spell as possible. So really, Chameleon's Necklace is very much the way to go. If you're really worried about her safety, you can go for Banshee's Veil, but in general, Chameleon's Necklace is where it's at. All right, Nasus is up next. For your rare relics, going for a strike relic is pretty good. Now, I would actually normally go for Stalker's Blade, but I felt like I had to put Gatebreaker here because it is actually Nasus's relic. So play I Strike the Enemy Nexus. Can go for this. I normally like to go for the Stalker's Blade to try to take out an enemy target, but if Nasus is at 10 damage, you can then immediately level him when you play him, which is pretty good. So going for a strike relic, solid. Blade Rack, another decent alternative. With Nasus, you're all about killing enemy units, so making sure all of your units are getting the best possible trade with Challenger is pretty helpful for you. Now, it will be a decent amount slower, but going for Archangel Staff and Grand General's counterplan, not too bad. His champion spell is very good. It's the Siphoning Strike. An ally strikes a unit. If it dies, grant allied champions everywhere 2/2. This gives you great scaling. This goes down to a 3 cost from your starting deck, and so being able to have the Archangel Staff means you can play this every round. So it will be a little bit slower, but does give you great scaling. So another great combo of relics to go with. Now, you can't always just go for double Stalker's Blade and just try to annihilate the enemy units when you play Nasus, which honestly is a pretty good option. As far as common relics, going for the Star Child Staff for that extra sustain, pretty good. Nasus is one of the weakest champions in the game, so often you're going to be taking some Nexus damage every single round. Making sure you can heal it up is good. Going for a common relic that has stats on it, so either Dreams of Yordles or even the Soul Spear, pretty helpful, especially if you're going to try to get a strike off, because this just gets you one closer to being able to level as soon as you play him. Now, when he's leveled, he does get Spell Shield, so you get that extra level of protection, so it's a good idea to try to play him when he can immediately level, and then he's also reducing down all enemies' power by -1, so getting him leveled is fairly important. And as usual, you can go for the Chameleon's Necklace, making sure you get more copies of your Nasus, and then more copies of its champion spell. Still solid, but since Nasus is so expensive, you're most likely going to be able to draw him by the time you need to play him, and since he's so expensive and it takes so long to play, having too many copies of your Nasus can kind of clog up your hand. All right, Neeko is up next, and similar to some other champions, she is another Guardian Orb champion. With her champion spell, you're able to resummon an exact copy of her, so you can trigger the Guardian Orbs multiple times. Lost Chapter also pretty good, because you can play Neeko, refill your spell mana, play immediately your Shape Splitter, and so you're immediately starting off with just a bunch of your Guardian Orbs proccing. Can be pretty fun and random sort of playstyle, but if you want to focus more on your units or Neeko yourself and not the randomness of Guardian Orbs, as usual, Corrupted Star Fragment, pretty solid to be able to keep scaling up your Neeko, making her a massive threat. And then Crown Guard Inheritance, also pretty good, because Neeko has a attack level up. So level up, attack, you've attacked with allies of 6 or more different subtypes. So you attack, use up your attack token, but then since you're leveling up, you're then gaining your attack token again. So essentially you get to attack twice with your units, and normally that amount of pressure is enough to end the game. So going for these two can be a pretty good combo, especially if you don't want to worry about the Guardian Orb shenanigans. Now, if you are playing with Guardian Orb, Lost Chapter is pretty solid, but also going for the Chameleon's Necklace, very good. Getting more copies of her in your deck, good, since she's a 2-cost champion. You also really like her champion spell. Even if you're not going for the Guardian Orb build, it's still a very good champion spell. So Chameleon's Necklace, very nice to have, but if you need extra survivability, you can always go for Banshee's Veil, more scaling throughout the course of a game. Rage Blade, not bad, especially since you're such a cheap champion. And then if you want some more upfront stats, Dreams of Yordles is solid. Next up, we have Nidalee, and she's a bit less flexible on some of her relic choices. For one, Lost Chapter. I know we normally don't start with the common relic, but here it is actually pretty important. You almost always want to have this equipped on your Nidalee, because what this does is it lets you play your Nidalee round 1. For Nidalee, she's normally a 4-cost, but you see Ambush is a 2-cost, so you can play her as a 2-cost bush. So you get her on the board, she still triggers your Lost Chapter, so you can then play her ambush spell, transform my Shadow in the Brush to Nidalee. So with Lost Chapter, you're able to play Nidalee on turn 1, which is excellent. So this is pretty much a relic you almost always want to have on. Next up then, Crown Guard Inheritance. When I level up Rally, Nidalee is one of those champions that can level up and down multiple times. I've seen you summon or transform 4 other allies. She then rallies and levels. She becomes the Pack Mother. And now Nexus Strike, transform me back into Nidalee and create a Javelin Toss in hand. So you make this right here, deal 4 to an enemy or the enemy Nexus if there are none. So you're able to level Nidalee into a more aggressive form. As long as you hit the Nexus, you then transform back. And then you just have the same level up condition of summoning more allies, summoning or transforming. So Crown Guard, you can trigger this sometimes multiple times in a single round. This makes Nidalee incredibly aggressive and just able to put a ton of pressure on the enemy. So Crown Guard is another relic that I almost always keep on Nidalee. I think it's very, very good. Somewhat similar to Chemtech Duplicator and other champions. If you're noticing you're always ending without actually using the rally, then you can start swapping it out for some more aggressive relics. But especially while you're leveling, this is one you normally want to keep on hand. Now, as far as the other relic to pair it with, Corrupted Star Fragment can be decent. Support, kill my supported ally, grant me its keyword and stats. So this can be nice, especially with Nidalee and her 3rd star power. The first time you transform an ally, you summon an ephemeral copy of them. Nidalee can often be the first person you transform. You summon an ephemeral copy with all of her stats. By using the Corrupted Star Fragment, you can then consume that, pretty much doubling Nidalee's stats, which then means the next time she transforms, her stats are doubled again, and you just keep doubling her stats every time you're attacking with her. So Corrupted Star Fragment can actually be pretty good, but the relic I prefer using is the Transmogulator. Support, transform my support ally into a random follower that costs 3 more. This is able to trigger your level up effect, so it helps you level up even faster, means you get some more rallies going. And the fun thing with this is, with Nidalee, if you transform her the first time in a round, you get that ephemeral copy of her. Both copies of Nidalee have this relic on them, so you can have 2 copies of Nidalee, both of them transforming a different follower, pretty much guaranteeing you're leveling up that round. You're getting a whole bunch of bigger units, and just an overall very fun combination, and my real go-to Nidalee build. Now, if for some reason you don't have Lost Chapter, you'd probably want to go for Chameleon's Necklace just to make sure you can play your Nidalee round 1. But if you have Lost Chapter, play Lost Chapter. The only time you don't want to do that is if you're in like a monthly challenge where it's already refilling your spell mana every round, or at least at round start. That's kind of the one time you can get rid of Lost Chapter, but if you have it, you pretty much always want to be playing it. All right, next up, we have Nilah. Now, for Nilah, I would highly recommend using the Loose Cannon's Payload. This is actually fantastic for you. When I'm summoned, discard your hand, then create that many Pow Pows in hand. This is really good because of the reworked 2nd star power. So for Nilah, they recently, or a couple months ago at this point, but they changed her 2nd star power, so when you discard a card, create a copy of it in your deck. So even when you discard a card, you're still putting it back in your deck. You're not actually losing that card. And then you draw 1 fleeting at next round start. So for each card you discard, you're drawing that many cards at your next round start, and they're fleeting, which means based on your other star powers, if you play that fleeting card, it then goes off twice. So with the Loose Cannon's Payload, you can discard your hand, which is normally like 5 cards. You're then going to have that many Pow Pows in hand, giving you some good removal, so that's always nice to have. But then you're going to draw 5 fleeting cards at next round start. This is fantastic in a multiple of ways. For one, you're getting a bunch of fleeting cards, so you can then play them, have them go off twice. Spell duplication is incredible, so that is very, very good. But then 2, since you're drawing so many cards, you're leveling up Nilah very quickly. Now, any of those fleeting cards you don't play, normally fleeting cards are discarded, but for Nilah, with your 2nd star power, any cards you discard are shuffled back in your deck, and you draw that many fleeting again at next round start. So this just gives you a bunch of fleeting cards immediately upon the game, upon starting the game, and upon playing Nilah. But you still have ways to generate more fleeting cards. So even though this is giving you a bunch of ones up front, normally later on in the game, you have other ways to draw more fleeting cards. Like you have multiple people that can make these slipstreams. Now these slipstreams draw 2 and grant them fleeting. One thing you can do is if you're running out of fleeting cards that were generated by your Loose Cannon's Payload, by discarding them all, you can just play a slipstream, you're drawing 2 more. Even if you can't play them, it doesn't matter, because since they're fleeting, they'll get discarded, meaning they get shuffled back in your hand, and that's just giving you more cards you're going to draw at next round start. So this has actually been very good. The more I've played Nilah, the better and better this has felt. I know it can seem a little weird up front, but if you have Nilah and you have this relic, test it out for a couple matches, and it actually starts feeling incredibly good. Now, if you don't have this, Gravedigger's Spade is a decent alternative. Round start, draw one and give it fleeting. Now this only activates when Nilah is on the board, but it's still a way to draw extra cards, get some more fleeting cards, so you can try to get your card duplication. So it can still work as an alternative, but the more I've played Loose Cannon's Payload, the better and better it's felt for Nilah. Now as far as the other relic to pair with the Loose Cannon's Payload, Corrupted Star Fragment is very good with Nilah and all of the extra cards you're generating. Being able to open up space on your board is pretty solid. So Corrupted Star Fragment to save kind of those stats on Nilah, increase her power, make her stronger. Now, as far as common relics, Chameleon's Necklace is pretty solid to get more copies of your Nilah. She is a cheap card. You want to be playing her round one, so having more copies of her is great. And then she also has a very cheap champion spell. So getting more copies of her, not too bad to be able to play that as well. But as usual, you can also throw on like a Lost Chapter to be able to play some spells right away, or go for like a Banshee's Veil for a little bit of protection on your Nilah. All right, day 2 of filming. If anything looks or sounds a little bit different, that's why these videos take a very long time to do. Already recorded the last part, which was about 2.5 hours. Now we gotta keep going, trying to get this done. So next up, we have Norra. Now for Norra and some rare relics, there are some that are actually pretty good to pair together. Unlike some champions, there's not necessarily as much of a mix and match, but it's also not as much of a hard combo. Norra is pretty versatile, a lot of different ways you can play her. For one, Corrupted Star Fragment, support, kill my supported ally, grant me its keywords and stats. Always good for a cheap 2-cost champion, especially an elusive. You can get Norra on the board right away, be able to buff her up by consuming your own units, and then with Norra, you're summoning so many units for free from your portals that your board can often get overfilled, so being able to free up space in your board by killing your own units, really not bad. Succubus Brand, great to pair with that, so 1/1, great to buff up Norra's stats, but then when I kill a unit, summon a random Husk. That Husk is going to count towards your level up as a created ally. It's also going to proc your star power, so it's going to get buffed up even more, so that the next unit you play is going to get all those extra stats added to them permanently. So another great one to pair here. You can also go for Transmogulator, support, transform my supported ally into a random follower that costs 3 more. Also great with Corrupted Star Fragment, but if you want to do this, you need to change the order like this. Your relics go in order from top to bottom, so this will activate first, transforming your follower into a created follower that costs 3 more, so they're going to be a bigger unit anyways. They're then going to count as a created follower, helping Norra's level up. They're also going to get the extra stats from your star powers, so they're going to be a bigger unit, further buffed up, and then you can consume them with the Corrupted Star Fragment, so that Norra just gets this absolute massive increase of buffs. And while I don't think it is as good, you can also throw on the Condenser. Support, create a 1-cost 1/1 copy of my supported ally in hand. This will then also count as a supported unit, so they can get buffed up as well. This is pretty good if you are going to have your Norra games go a little bit longer, because you can then support a unit that's a base cost of above 4. So you can then play them as a 1-cost. That'll trigger your second star power to be able to give you some more portals. Not nearly as good, in my opinion, as some of these other relics, but there is some synergy there if you want to go for it. Last up then for rare relics that I'll mention is the Troll King's Crown. Allies have Overwhelm. You normally have a pretty full board, so making sure all your units, especially with those buff stats they're getting from your star powers, are able to actually rush down the enemy is pretty nice. With Norra, you are a very early game focused deck. You want to be very aggressive, putting a lot of pressure on the enemy, and the Troll King's Crown just helps you end those games a lot faster and not worry if you get actually blocked out at all. Now, as far as common relics, pretty versatile champion. Rageblade, if you want to go for that scaling playstyle, not bad. Again, you're getting Norra on the board right away, and then she's going to be attacking every single round, or every round you have the attack token. So getting that scaling off, not bad if you just want to have the biggest Norra possible. But if you want some more upfront stats, Dreams of Yordles, not bad. Also, the protection from Banshee's Veil, also pretty good. Really though, as normal, I would really just go for the Chameleon's Necklace. Game start, create 2 copies of me in your deck. You want to be sure you can play Norra round 1, so she can get those Nexus strikes off for those portals. And then you also really like her champion spell. It is a bit expensive, but it's very, very good. So getting extra copies of Norra that turn into the Portal Palooza, Also great to have. All right, Ornn is up next, and he's a little bit more of a pick and choose champion as far as relics go. Corrupted Star Fragment, fantastic. Again, kill my supported ally, grant mates keywords and stats. This is actually different than most other units, because normally Ornn is going to be leveled when you play him, and Ornn, when he's leveled, has a very strong effect of attack, forge me twice, then summon a attacking Spirit of the Ram with my stats. So you see that right here. This has Overwhelm and then also Ornn stats. So you're actually using the Corrupted Star Fragment on your Ram. Since that Ram is ephemeral, it's going to die at the end of the round. All those stats are essentially going to be wasted. With Corrupted Star Fragment, you're just saving all of those stats on Ornn, essentially doubling his stats, also giving him Overwhelm. So this is absolutely fantastic for you, and you're not really worrying about killing your other units because you're always trying to just consume that Ram. Crown Guard Inheritance, like I said with Ornn, normally he's leveled when you play him, so you can just drop him, level, immediately attack, and try to end the game. And if he's not leveled, then he'll normally level when he attacks. So then you can get one attack in, level, attack again with your Ram, and then end the game. And then one last relic to pair with it. It's a little bit on the trolley side, but can be pretty fun, is going for Gale Force. So with Ornn, you attack, you summon that giant Ram, you potentially consume it with your Corrupted Star Fragment, doubling your stats on Ornn. You then attack again, because with Gale Force you have that Scout. Summon another Ram with your new stat point, which is double the previous one. You consume those as well. Now, Ornn is going to get recalled at the end of the round, so you have to end with that round. But the 2 attacks from Scout should be enough to kill just about anything. The only problem is if your Ornn gets like frostbitten or stunned or hit with some hard removal. So if you want to go for this sort of build, which kind of high risk but can be a lot of fun, you'd probably want to pair it with a Banshee's Veil. That way you have that spell shield to make sure Ornn doesn't get hit with any annoying CCs or spells or anything. Now, if you want to make sure Ornn is leveled, you can drop like a Stalker's Blade so that when he's played, he strikes the weakest enemy. Now, he does have the 5/5 stat line, but he will equip first. So normally then he'll be well over the 8 power. Get a strike off and then immediately level. So going for the Stalker's Blade or even the Gatebreaker just to try to make sure Ornn is leveled when you play him is something you can do as well. Now again, as far as common relics, Banshee's Veil can be very nice, but really I would just go for the Star Child Staff. Ornn can be pretty slow, can take a lot of damage, especially from some more early game focused opponents. So being able to have that sustain to make it through the entire adventure is pretty nice. Star Child Staff, definitely worth considering. Next up we have Pyke, and I think it's pretty simple and straightforward. Going for the Stalker's Blade to be able to drop him, immediately get a strike off and try to level him up, because when he's leveled, when I kill an enemy I strike the weakest enemy. So being able to have him play, get a strike, and then if he gets a kill, as long as he's leveled, he then just wipes the entire enemy board. This can also be very good from the death from below, summons Pyke striking an enemy, so you can choose who he strikes. This is going to get 1 hit off, but since he's going to get summoned, the Stalker's Blade will also trigger, so he essentially gets 2 strikes off. So really great for trying to level him up. Also with the change in Pyke's star powers, now the lurk effect is giving you a lot more scaling, especially in your power department. So that makes Stalker's Blades feel even better. Now, if you don't have 2 of them, you can just go for a stat relic like the Warhammer, just to make sure your strike hits harder and you can try to level him up a little bit quicker. Now, you can also go for some of the more supporting relics, such as like the Blade Rack for allies having Challenger, or the Troll King's Crown to give your units Overwhelm. Normally that's something I would focus on later though, when you have your 3rd rare relic slot, because with Pyke you do often rely on your units, so giving them some support is decent. In general though, especially while leveling, I would just focus on running the Stalker's Blade, either 2 Stalker's Blade or Stalker's Blade plus some stats. Now, one other relic I will mention is the Wicked Harvest. Play deal 3 to all other units. This can be a decent way to try to level up your Pyke. Couple downsides though. For one, this is a play effect, not a summon effect. So unlike Stalker's Blade, you can really only get this to go off really once, and it's not going to get triggered from your death from below. Also, this is going to hit your units, and while that will contribute to your level up, with Pyke you normally don't really want to be damaging your own units. You want to maintain your board. So dealing 3 damage to all of them isn't great, but it is a alternative if you maybe don't want to go for Stalker's Blade. Again, as far as common relics, going for something with some stats like Soul Spear or Dreams of Yordles isn't bad, because that just helps you level up your Pyke faster so you can start clearing the entire enemy board. But if you really felt like you needed that protection, you could go for the Banshee's Veil. Really though, if I didn't go for one of these common stat relics, I would just go for the Chameleon's Necklace, try to get more copies of your Pyke. You're more likely to then have him be lurking, which then transforms him into the death from below, so you can summon him striking an enemy. So if you're not going to go for a stat relic, I think Chameleon's Necklace is the best way to go. Next up then, we have Samira. In my opinion, the build for Samira is a little bit more set in stone than many of the other champions. For one, Dreadway Chase Guns is absolutely fantastic. So when I'm summoned, create 2 warning shots in hand. 0 cost spell, deal 1 to the enemy nexus. With Samira, she's all about getting her plunder damage off to get some cost reduction, and also about playing at least 3 cards every single round, because that's also how you can contribute to her level up. I've seen play 6 cards, resets when you start a round with the attack token. So the Chase Gun giving you easy ways to trigger that plunder, but also just free spells to be able to play to help your level up condition is fantastic. Crown Guard Inheritance when I level up Rally. This feels absolutely amazing on Samira. So when she is leveled, she already has a way to generate more rallies. And it's the same condition as leveling her up. When you play 6 cards rally, resets when you start with the attack token. So that's pretty much the same thing as her level up. So being able to level up, start with a rally is great. And then if you don't end the game shortly thereafter, you can keep generating more rallies. Really though, for Samira, this first rally is enough to end the game and just fits her playstyle so well. Now, if for some reason you don't have Crown Guard Inheritance or you don't want to use it, going for like the Blade Rack, allies have Challenger, or Troll King's Crown, allies have Overwhelm. Both of those feel pretty good. I would lean towards the Overwhelm for Samira if I was going to pick one of those 2. With Samira, you want to be rushing down the enemy, so having that Overwhelm so you can't get blocked out is very nice. Now, as far as common relics, Lost Chapter is great. Play, refill your spell mana. Again, you want to be playing as many cards as possible in your first couple rounds, so you can try to level up Samira. Having the extra mana to be able to do that is great. Also, when she's played and when she strikes, she's going to be creating these flares. 1 cost spell, so pretty cheap. You still need mana to play it. So making sure you have that extra mana is great. But as usual, if you want a little bit of extra protection, Spell Shield is solid for you. Rage Blade, since you are a 2-cost champion and you are trying to get extra attacks in, Rage Blade to give you a little bit more scaling is pretty good. And as usual, Chameleon's Necklace, always a great option, especially for such a cheap champion that you want to play round 1. Next up then, we have Set, and this is my go-to rare relic build for him. But since we are just going to be having 2 rare relics, you kind of have to pick and choose which ones you want. Chemtech Duplicator, absolutely fantastic for Set. When you play a spell, if you have 6 or more mana gems, copy with the same targets. He's a 5 cost, so you normally can play this for 5 mana. Then the next round, Chemtech Duplicator goes off. Very good for Set, especially because he's all based around the coin mechanic. So coin, refill 1 mana, and these can stack up, so it refills more and more mana. With the Chemtech Duplicator, it essentially doubles the amount of mana you're getting back from these, so that is great. And then for a lot of your spells, they generate coins. Since this goes off twice, it's then generating twice the amount of coins for you. So once you get Set with his Chemtech Duplicator, he pretty much can just keep going forever and just steamrolls any opponent. Now, the Grand General's counterplan, very nice to make sure you're generating this Facebreaker every round with your Set, giving you a good amount of control, and then also giving you some coin generation, so that is fantastic. Archangel Staff is nice to get that extra mana, but especially once you have Chemtech Duplicator active, you're not going to struggle for mana nearly as much. So for your first build, I would really go for these 2 together. And then when you get level 30, I would go for that Archangel Staff. Now, if for some reason you don't have or don't want to use the Chemtech Duplicator, just going for these 2 will also be a solid alternative, although not nearly as good, because the Chemtech Duplicator on Set is just fantastic. Now, as far as common relics, Chameleon's Necklace, still great. You want to be playing your Set, especially if you have your Chemtech Duplicator, because he's then generating so much more power. He has to be on the board for this to activate. And then he also has a great champion spell, so getting extra copies of him feels fantastic. Now, if you wanted, you could go for Stormrazor for the quick attack challenger combo. Not as important for Set, because he has his little safety bubble of the first time I would drop below 1 health while attacking, give me barrier instead. And then once he's leveled, while I'm attacking, I can't take damage or die. So him having the extra protection from the quick attack really doesn't matter as much. And then as usual, if you need the extra protection, you can go for some Spell Shield, or you could go for Lost Chapter, just so you can play Set and immediately have some mana to be able to maybe play some coins, refill your mana, so you can keep going. Next up, we have Swain, and he's pretty simple and straightforward as far as relics. For one, the Curator's Gatebreaker, even by itself, is absolutely fantastic. With Swain, he has this Nexus Strike effect, deal 3 to the enemy Nexus. So even though his initial strike is going to be very weak because he only has 3 power, Gatebreaker's reducing that down. The Nexus Strike is just bumping it up to do even more damage. So stacking even 2 Gatebreakers, not a bad idea, because you have such a strong Nexus Strike effect. And then if he's leveled, his Nexus Strike gets even crazier, dealing that damage to everyone. So yeah, just going for Gatebreaker, not bad. But you can also pair Gatebreaker with Riptide Battery, just like Jhin, because these skills will actually scale off of your star powers. So the lower the enemy Nexus is, the more these are going to hit for. Also, if you happen to have Swain at 6 stars, which I don't expect, but if you do, these will hit the entire enemy board, so just doing absolutely crazy damage. But even without the 6 stars, this is still fantastic. Now, another relic people do like to go with is the Dreadweight Chase Guns. When in summon, create 2 warning shots in hand. Now, baseline, these just deal 1 to the enemy Nexus. But again, these will scale with your star powers, so the lower the enemy is, the harder these are going to hit. So you can play these and then wait until they're going to do enough damage, and then just really hit the enemy Nexus for a ton. So another decent alternative, but really, I would just stick with the Gatebreaker and the Riptide Battery. Now, as far as common relics, you could go for the Ravenous Hydra. When I'm summoned, deal 1 to all enemies, just to increase his level up of you've dealt non-combat damage. Lost Chapter, also great, so you can immediately refill your mana, try to play some spells, and deal some more damage to the enemy. Everfrost, not bad. Swain does have a decent amount of stun synergy, so that's pretty good for you. As always, there is Spell Shield, but normally I don't find Swain dying too often to enemy spells. So while it is nice, it's not quite as necessary as it is on many other champions, especially cheap champions that have a very weak health pool. With Swain, you have 6 health baseline, so he's pretty hard to kill. And then, as normal, Chameleon's Necklace is solid. You want to be sure you're playing your Swain. He is a pretty expensive champion, so you have more chances to draw him before the first round. So you're more likely to draw him by the time you need to play him. But his champion spell is absolutely fantastic. Getting extra copies of him feels great. One last relic though, the Scourge of Ashe, Plunder I cost 2 less. Swain is a very strong champion, so being able to get him on the board a little bit earlier can be great. So potentially going for Scourge of Ashe plus Riptide Battery. They both have the Plunder effect. But with that, you'll get less shots from your Riptide Battery, so do be aware of that, because this goes off your cost. But potentially going for like Scourge's Dash plus Gatebreakers, you just get them on the board early, get that Nexus Strike effect off. Another solid relic to consider, although I'd really stick with probably Gatebreaker and Gatebreaker plus Riptide. Next then we have Tahm Kench. He's another one that's pretty simple and straightforward. Berserker's Buckle, absolutely fantastic. When I survive damage, grant me 2/2. This is pretty much the exact same thing that's happening from his star powers. So Tahm Kench just gets insane scaling every time he takes damage. So that's pretty good. And you can stack multiple of these on your Tahm Kench. Also, Troll King's Crown, allies have Overwhelm. Normally with Tahm Kench, your units are scaling at a massive amount, but you can often just end up getting blocked by the enemy, so it makes games take way longer. So just throwing on a Troll King's Crown to make sure your units can punch through and do that damage is very nice and will speed up your games dramatically. But another rare relic to shout out, Archangel Staff, pretty good. Round start, refill your spell mana. Every single round, Tahm Kench is making this Acquired Taste, which is a 2 cost, and it's a great card to be able to capture the enemy and have them strike him. So he can use this to scale up as well as just capturing enemy units. But 2 mana you're having to spend every round. Making sure you always have the mana for that with the Archangel Staff, not too bad. Now, as far as relics, the Armadillo Shell, actually pretty good. 1 health and tough. That tough can really mitigate quite a lot of damage and give you great scaling. So that is a good alternative for you as a common relic. Lost Chapter can be okay if you want to be able to play your Acquired Taste immediately upon dropping your Tahm Kench. So that's also pretty good. And then Wargmog's Armor, the regen, pretty good to make sure your Tahm Kench is just always going back to full health and not getting too low from all the hits he's taking. Next up then we have Talia. So first up for rare relics, Crown Guard Inheritance is great when I level up Rally. Often Talia can level when you play her, so just being able to rely on your units, do a lot of damage, and then drop Talia mostly as a rally to finish off the game is quite solid. Now, Troll King's Crown, this is something that is only good if you don't have Talia at 3 stars. If you do have her at 3 stars, your units have Overwhelm already, so this isn't needed. But if you don't have her at 3 stars yet, then Troll King's Crown is going to be very good for you. So if you do have her at 3 stars, you already have that Overwhelm. Going for that Challenger to make sure all your units are getting the best traits possible, also very solid. Really though, Talia is another one of those champions similar to Lux, where you can focus on the champion, or you can just make the champion have a complete passive setup and just focus on your units and still be perfectly fine. So if you wanted to just get rid of your rare relics, go for 1 or 2 Star Child Staff, giving you a crazy amount of sustain, which can be really good for Talia because in the first rounds you can just get all your landmarks set up. Even if the enemy gets a couple hits in because you don't have blockers, it's fine because you'll heal up. So just going for Star Child Staff is pretty good, and going for Z Drive Prototype just to make sure you get the right powers with Lillia can be very good as well. So another champion that can actually rock a full passive common relic build to great success. If you're not wanting to play this though, and you want to go for like that Crown Guard Inheritance and potentially Blade Rack build, still going for a Star Child Staff can be okay, but potentially swapping this out for like a Everfrost to stun the strongest enemy just so they don't have a blocker so you can try to end, or going for a Chameleon's Necklace just so you have enough copies of your champion that you can consistently draw and play her. Next up then we have Teemo. So as far as rare relics, just going for stat relics actually is pretty good. I actually did a video where I just went triple Warhammer on Teemo and went pretty well. Teemo is a 1-cost elusive unit, so just being able to drop a giant elusive unit on the board round 1 and using that to bully the enemy can be very good. So just going for stat relics, actually not bad. Gatebreaker can be decent as long as you have a stat relic to pair it with. Now you can remember get some power from your common relic slot. You don't necessarily have to have a rare stat relic, but Gatebreaker with that -1 power is going to make Teemo hit for nothing, so you have to be able to buff up your Teemo. But with Gatebreaker, Nexus Strikes are very good for Teemo. Before he levels, you're planting 5 Puff Caps, and then after he levels, you're doubling the Puff Caps in the enemy deck, so that's great. Crown Guard is also another very good relic, because normally with Teemo, at least if you have him at 3 stars, he's going to plant 10 Puff Caps when you attack. Then Teemo himself can plant 5, so in your very first attack, you can rally and then immediately attack again to double their Puff Caps. One of my go-to builds for Teemo is actually going for Gatebreaker, Crown Guard Inheritance, and then one of the stat relics, such as like Dreams of Yordles or even the Soul Spear. That way he has enough damage to get a hit off, so that's going to plant 5 Puff Caps. You then attack, plant 10 Puff Caps. That happens before you actually hit the Nexus. He immediately levels, which gives you attack token back. So then you can finish off your attack and then attack again. But both of those attacks, Teemo is going to be doing his Nexus Strike of doubling the poison Puff Caps in the enemy deck. So this just gives you a lot of aggression round 1 and fills the entire enemy deck with Puff Caps. So this is a pretty good build you can go with, but just going for stats with either a stat relic or even Corrupted Star Fragment isn't bad. Now, Corrupted Star Fragment is a little bit weaker on Teemo just because you can often struggle to have enough units for Teemo to consume. And normally those units you're summoning, you're really needing them to be blockers. So while Corrupted Star Fragment can be good, it is a little bit worse on Teemo than on many other champions. Now, as far as some other rare relics, if you don't need a stat relic because you're not using Gatebreaker, then Spell Shield can be really good to just make sure Teemo is less likely to die. But if you're also going for scaling, Rage Blade, decent, giving you a good increase to your stats, because especially since Teemo is just a 1/1, your first attack, you're doubling his power and health. So this does feel much more impactful on Teemo. But as normal, or as usual, you can't just go for a Chameleon's Necklace. Since he's a 1-cost, you want to be playing him round 1. Having the extra copies to make sure you can do that is very good for you. All right, next up we have Poro King, and he's another one of those champions that is actually very good to not focus on him. So you can just go for a full common passive build. But if you don't want to do that, Corrupted Star Fragment is very good for you, being able to get a bunch of stats and keywords on your Poro King and then free up your board space for some more Poros, because often your board can get pretty crowded. So Corrupted Star Fragment can feel very good. Scourge is stashed to try to get him on the board a little bit earlier. Also can be quite solid. Voidborn Carapace, evolve when any unit dies, grant me its keywords. Also pretty good because this also affects when the enemy dies. So you kill an enemy with Lifesteal or Elusive, you now have that on your Poro King. And with Poro King, you really need to focus on getting keywords to trigger your board-wide scaling. So this can be very good. Corrupted Star Fragment, you do have bonuses for when your units die. You get more keywords from your second star power. So another synergy there with Corrupted Star Fragment. And then there is also Chemtech Duplicator. When you play a spell, if you have 6 or more mana gems, copy it with the same targets. So this can be fun for Poro King. It's not normally optimal, but Poro King is able to generate Poro Snacks. So making all your Poro Snacks go off twice is pretty fun. Also, Poro King baseline is a 5-cost champion. So you play him next round, Chemtech Duplicator is active, and now all your Poro Snacks are getting doubled, giving you just massive scaling. It's a pretty slow playstyle, but can be quite a lot of fun. If you are going to go for a Duplicator, you might want to pair that with an Archangel Staff, just so you have the mana to always be playing your Poro Snacks. But similar to Lillia, you could go for like a Blade Rack as well as Troll King's Crown, just to be able to throw out 2 extra keywords on your unit, just so you're more likely to get that board-wide scaling. Although for Talia, it doesn't matter as much that all of your units have keywords, just so you have at least 4 unique keywords among your units. So still good to give your whole board of Poros Challenger and Overwhelm, but not quite as important as Kai'Sa, since she wants all of her units to have at least 3. Now, as far as common relics, if you're still going for a build that's focusing on Poro King, going for Dreams of Yordles is excellent because this gives you Spirit and Impact. With Poro King, you need 4 unique keywords. Having Spirit and Impact giving you 2 of them is great. Really though, for Poro King, like I said earlier, very good to just go for a completely passive build where you're focusing on your units and not focusing on playing Poro King. So going for like some Star Child Staff to be sure you get some good sustain, or going for multiple Z-Drive prototypes so you get the right rerolls. Being sure you get the right powers for Poro King is a massive game changer. So honestly, just going for 2 or even 3 Z-Drive prototypes can be very beneficial for you. All right, next up we have Thresh, and he is a fun one. So Thresh, you're all about having your units die. You're getting bonuses from that from your star powers, and then also that's helping your level up condition. So Corrupted Star Fragment, support, kill my supported ally, grant me his keywords and stats. A lot of synergies here for you. With Thresh from his star powers, one of your units is going to get buffed and all the keywords based on the units that died last round. So if that doesn't get on Thresh, you can then consume that unit, getting all those keywords on him, making him an absolute unit. So Corrupted Star Fragment, very, very fun. Then we also have Wicked Harvest, play deal 3 to all other units. Again, great because killing your own units or the enemy units is always good for you, really helping you level up so you can pull out whatever champion you have as your support champion. And then Succubus Brand is absolutely fantastic on Thresh. So 1/1, not bad. And then when I kill a unit, summon a random husk. So Thresh, you're all about killing your own units, especially with a build like this. But the thing is, those husks, when you play another unit, they technically kill the husk when they are summoned. So that is another unit dying that counts towards Thresh's level up. So with Succubus Brand, you level up Thresh incredibly quickly. Normally what can happen is when you play Thresh, you have a minimum of 3 units on your board. So Thresh kills those 3 units. He then makes 3 husks. So if you play one other unit, they will technically kill those 3 husks, thereby leveling your Thresh. So you can often level him in the first or second round of having him on the board, which is crazy. And again, since these are technically units that are dying, they're triggering all of your effects that are benefit from units dying. So very, very good relics right here. Definitely recommend testing these out on Thresh. Now, as far as common relics, I would really go for the Chameleon's Necklace just to make sure you're getting enough copies of your Thresh. While he is a 5 cost, you do have built-in cost reduction for him, and you want to be getting him on the board as early as possible. Also, he has a decent champion spell, so extra copies aren't bad. Now, if you really want a specific keyword on him, you can get it. So if you really want to go for like the Challenger Quick Attack combo, you could go for that here. Often with Thresh, you're generating and getting so many keywords on your units that Thresh will pretty much end up with just about all of them anyways. But if there's a really good combination you like, such as the Quick Attack Challenger, you can go ahead and go for that here. All right, next up we have Varus, and this is very simple and straightforward. This is pretty much the go-to Varus build. So not really one for you to pick and choose what you like. So with Varus, Hymn of Valor, when him summon, create a redoubled Valor in hand. It costs 3. So fully heal an ally, then double its power and health. With Varus, he's able to duplicate spells, so this goes off twice on your Varus, buffing him up to be absolutely massive. You pair that with Lost Chapter, so that you have the 3 mana to immediately play the Hymn of Valor. And then you have the Crown Guard Inheritance. When I level up Rally, Varus has a level up if you targeted 7+ allies. When you play him and then use this Hymn of Valor on him, that's going to give you 2. So you only have to target allies 5 times, but again, remember, because of your spell duplication, you only really have to play 4 spells. And since you're generating spells every round, normally not that difficult, and Varus can often be leveled by the time you play him. So very simple and kind of brain dead build of play Varus, play the Hymn of Valor on him, and then end the game. So this is pretty much one of the best builds in the game for Varus, just flat out, even considering epic relics. So this is generally what you want to be going with. Now, if you don't want to focus on this type of build, because either you don't have these relics, you just find it very boring, you could go for like a Archangel Staff plus Chemtech Duplicator, just so you have the extra mana to play spells, and then you can get even more spell duplication with the Chemtech. And then if you're not going for that sort of cheesy build to immediately end with Varus and using that Lost Chapter, then going for like a Banshee's Veil just to give him some amount of protection isn't too bad. All right, next up we have Vayne, and Vayne is an interesting one. When she first came out, she was absolutely insane, super powerful, but because she was so powerful, especially in PvP, they had to nerf her so many times. So now, especially early on, she is a little bit rough, but as you get further on, especially through the constellation, she starts to feel like her original self and she becomes super powerful again. For this video though, I'm expecting you don't have her above the 4 stars. So some solid relics to go with. For one, just going for any flat stat relics, not too bad. Also, Crown Guard Inheritance when I level up Rally. With Vayne, she's all about getting multiple attacks in, so being able to get another Rally and another attack with your level up is pretty solid. Also, Archangel Staff, not too bad. Vayne makes an incredibly powerful spell called Tumble right here that gives you a free attack and lets you equip equipment for free, essentially, as long as it costs 2 or less. Very, very good spell, especially with your star powers that give your weapon Scout, because this can essentially give you a rally. So incredibly good spell. So having the Archangel Staff to try to help you play that every round can be very helpful. That being said, you are able to level up Vayne pretty quickly, and then when she levels, the tumble costs 0. So Archangel Staff still solid, but it's not giving you as much value as you might expect because kind of run out of not really needing it anymore. Corrupted Star Fragment, not bad. Support, kill my support ally, grant me its keywords and stats. Again, just putting all of your power on Vayne, normally the way to go. Often though, with how many times you're attacking, you're actually just going to run out of units to feed to Vayne. And then since all of your power is on Vayne, she is more susceptible to just getting hit with some sort of CC or spell to ruin your day. Berserker's Buckle even, this isn't bad. When I survive damage, grant me 2/2. Since Vayne doesn't have any sort of quick attack or any way to avoid taking damage, Berserker's Buckle, so you can actually attack and block with Vayne and still be scaling up off of that damage. This can be pretty good for you. And often when you have this, the enemy won't want to attack because they know you're just going to scale off of their attack. So it actually sometimes keeps the enemy from being too aggressive or not even blocking you, which can be pretty funny. And then also Troll King's Crown, allies have Overwhelm. Overwhelm, very nice to have for Vayne, so getting it either here or with the Common Relic can be pretty good for you. Now, as far as Common Relics go, Rage Blade is great, attack grant me 1/1. With Vayne, you're often attacking like 3 times in a round, so you're getting actually a crazy amount of scaling from Rage Blade, pretty much more than any other champion. So that can be very good, especially if you want to go for that scaling Vayne build. But with Vayne, since she doesn't have any keywords, a lot of the keyword relics also pretty good. Banshee's Veil giving you that extra amount of protection. Storm Razor, great if you want to be able to not take damage when you are attacking, because you'll hit the enemy and kill them before they can hit you back. So Storm Razor, pretty good. If you're going for like Berserker's Buckle and you want to be getting hit, then going for Grand Duelist Blade, that Challenger, just to make sure you're taking the best trades possible, also very solid. Or even going for like Troll King's Crusher, to have that Overwhelm to make sure they can't really block you out successfully. A lot of common relics that do work quite well with Vayne. Alright, next up then we have Vhagar, and for him it's pretty simple and straightforward. Chemtech Duplicator, when you play a spell, if you have 6 or more mana gems, copy with the same targets. Absolutely fantastic for you. This is normally how you're going to be closing out games. So you're just going to be trying to get Vhagar on the board and power up your darkness as much as possible. And once you hit that 6 more mana gems, you'll level up your Vhagar and just nuke down the enemy nexus. This is incredibly good and what I would pretty much always recommend using for Vhagar. With that then, you could either pair it with Luden's Tempest. All of your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage. Great for boosting up your darkness right away. And then you also have Scourge's Stash, Plunder, I cost 2 less. Very, very good for you since you want to get your Vhagar on the board early, since round start grants your darkness everywhere 1 extra damage. So a great way to just passively boost up your darkness damage. So really for the first 2 rare relics, I'd go actually for Chemtech Duplicator and Scourge's Stash, and then throw on the Ludens later on. But if you don't have one of these, Ludens is also solid. Now, if you don't have Vhagar at 3 stars and your darkness isn't free, then you can go for Archangel Staff, round start refill your spell mana. That'll really help you out. If though you have your Vhagar 3 stars, this really isn't needed at all. Now, as far as common relics, Banshee's Veil is actually pretty good. With Vhagar, you need him to stay on the board and stay alive, because with him, you need to have him leveled so that when you play darkness, it can target anything. This is how you're going to be nuking down the enemy nexus, because normally darkness only targets an enemy. When this targets anything, you can then hit the enemy nexus with your darkness spells, and this is the main way you are winning. So protecting him with the spell shield, not too bad. Again, if you don't have him at 3 stars, then going for the Lost Chapter for some mana refill isn't too bad. Normally though, you're just going to want to go for Chameleon's Necklace. just to make sure you can get enough copies of your Veigar that you can play him as soon as possible, because he is the main way you're scaling up your darkness. And then even if he dies, having extra copies of him to try to play him again is solid. And his champion spell is pretty good as well. Next up we have Vi, and it's another pretty simple one. So up first, Gatebreaker, -1 power, play I strike the enemy nexus. This is incredibly good for you. For one, Vi can scale up to 10 power. Well, technically 9 with a -1 here. So you can just really hit the enemy nexus for quite a lot of damage. And then that can also immediately level her up, which can be quite beneficial. So Gatebreaker, great. You can also throw on Stalker's Blade, but for Vi, I really prefer Gatebreaker. Now with this, you can go for just a stat relic, so she hits that 10 power a little bit faster. So whether that's a rare stat relic or a common one. So going for like Warhammer is decent if you want to go for that Gatebreaker build. Another relic that also works out pretty well for you is the Wriggle's Lantern. With Vi, she does have a lot of impact synergy, and you want her in your opening hand. So being able to have her in your opening hand and just getting this stacking impact while you're also stacking up her power can be pretty good. Now note, you can use double Wriggles, and that doesn't increase the maximum stacks, but you stack up twice as fast. So just note, if you want to do multiple Wriggles, that's how it's going to work. Now, as far as common relics, Quick Attack, great for that Quick Attack Challenger combo, but also if you need a stat relic, Dreams of Yordles or the Soul Spear are also solid. Overwhelm, also decent since Vi is going to normally have a very high attack pool. And then Chameleon's Necklace, just to make sure you can have Vi in your opening hand so she can scale up with this stacking power and potentially the stacking impact as well. All right, next up we have Vex. And Vex is an interesting one, especially while she's just at the 3 stars. She gets a lot of power from the constellation later on, but at 3 stars could use a bit of help. So up first we have the Loose Cannons payload. When summon, discard your hand and then create that many pow-pows in hand. For Vex, you can sometimes struggle to have enough spells and skills to really make use of your 2nd star power. So being able to make a whole bunch of pow-pows is great. Also for Vex, from your 2nd star power, since your spells are doing damage in the form of Gloom, if you have Vex on the board and leveled, she essentially doubles your damage. Because when an enemy gains Gloom, it gains it again. So just however much an enemy is going to get of Gloom, that's essentially doubled if Vex is on the board and leveled. So these pow-pows, instead of dealing 3 damage, are essentially dealing 6 damage in the form of Gloom from your Vex. So giving you great removal. These pow-pows, very solid. Another great relic to pair it with, Grand General's Counterplan. So round start, create a fleeting copy of me in hand. Champion spell is solid. 2 cost, grant the enemy Gloom and draw 1. Having that extra draw is very handy, as well as just extra Gloom generation. When you've discarded your entire hand, making a card with draw on it every round is excellent. Also, Archangel Staff, to get that extra spell mana every round, is also very good. And then Chemtech Duplicator. When you play a spell, if you have 6 or more mana gems, copy it with the same targets. This plus the Loose Cannons payload, or even later on pairing it with these 2, very solid, especially if you're trying to take Vex into the tougher challenges like Aurelion Sol or especially Lissandra, where they have very big units, because now these pow-pows, instead of dealing 6 damage, can deal 12 damage in the form of Gloom from that Chemtech Duplicator. So this gives you crazy amounts of removal, which honestly is probably going to be too much depending on what the content you're doing. But if you're trying to take Vex into some high-end content, then Chemtech plus Loose Cannons payload can be pretty solid for you. Although Chemtech in general is just good for Vex. Now I do need to mention Utmost Despair. Play grant enemies Gloom. I think this relic is fine, but it's normally not generating enough value where I think it's really worth it, because you're playing Vex, you're granting enemies Gloom, and then it's essentially just a dead relic. It's not doing anything else for you. Whereas like Loose Cannons payload, it's giving you a hand full of pow-pows, so that's going to give you a lot more value. Chemtech Duplicator, constantly doubling all your spells once you have them at 6 stars. Or like Grand General's Counterplan, every round giving you a solid effect. With Utmost Despair, especially when you play Vex, you don't know how many targets you're going to hit. Like maybe if they have an entire full board, then it'll be worth it, but you don't really know that's going to be the case. So for me, I just normally find it doesn't give you enough value, but it is kind of a relic made for Vex, so I feel like I should mention it. Now, as far as relics to go with, Lost Chapter, pretty simple and straightforward. Getting that mana back, nice to be able to play some spells right away, especially if you're going for like Loose Cannons payload. Z-Drive Prototype to make sure you get the right powers and also spells in the shop. So having some rerolls to reroll the shop to try to get some very powerful spells can be pretty good for you. As usual though, Chameleon's Necklace is very solid. You want to be playing your Vex. Vex's level up effect is incredibly powerful, so you want to make sure you can keep Vex on the board. But then they also have a absolutely fantastic champion spell, so getting more copies of this feels amazing. All right, next up we have Viego, and he's another one where there's some solid relics, but you can kind of pick and choose to build out your exact playstyle. Corrupted Star Fragment, excellent support, kill my support ally, grant me keywords and stats. You do have a lot of ephemeral units, so you'll pretty much always have a free target to kill. And in the first round, you kill another ally, summon Encroaching Mist. That's just from Viego. Then you also have your star powers that also benefit from you killing your own units as well. So Corrupt the Star Fragment, very, very good for you. Now, if you don't have Viego at 4 stars, which I'm not expecting you to, then Troll King's Crown is absolutely fantastic and needed to get that overwhelm, because you have these massive units with great scaling, but often you'll just get blocked out and your games will drag on. So this is very good. But once you get your 4th star power to give you overwhelm, this is not needed. Strike relics are also fantastic for Viego. He starts with 6 power, but that's going to be scaling up a lot from your Encroaching Mists, because every time you summon one, they're buffing up your Viego. So going for Stalker's Blade to try to kill an enemy target to again summon another mist from your star powers is pretty good. Or you can just throw on multiple Gatebreakers so that Viego, you're able to drop him, he can just nuke the enemy nexus. Also a total valid strategy. As far as common relics, probably want to get just more copies of Viego. You want to have him in your opening hand so you can get him cost reduced from your 2nd star power. So even though he's a 6 cost, you still want to have him round 1. I will say though, his champion spell is not the best. It can be good in niche situations, but normally you don't want to let enemy units strike your nexus. Chameleon's Necklace is a little bit of a mixed bag. You want to be able to play your Viego, and you want to have him in your opening hand. Once you have your Viego on the board, extra copies of him normally are a little bit wasted. But if you feel like you need the extra layer of protection, Banshee's Veil for that spell shield can be fine. Again, normally Viego is going to be pretty big as far as stats, so he's often going to be hard to kill unless you just have some form of hard CC like a Vengeance. Really for Viego, the common relic isn't nearly as important as it is for many other champions, so you can really pick whatever you want here for the common relic. All right, Volibear is up next. He's another one that's very simple and straightforward. So up first, Luden's Tempest. All of your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage. This is great for your Volibear because when you play, he plays 3 Relentless Storms. Those Relentless Storms normally deal 4 damage to a unit and 2 to the enemy nexus, so buffing up both of those so that you just have crazy removal for your Volibear. This is going to deal a ton of damage. And then when he's leveled, he then generates those every time you attack with him. So again, just making those all hit harder actually feels fantastic. Stalker's Blade, when I'm summoned, I strike the weakest enemy. Great to just be able to get more kills with your Volibear. You can get some more sigils going, so you can try to play other Titanic units. Another very simple and straightforward relic that works out great for you. And then you can also go for the Gatebreaker. -1 power, play I strike the enemy nexus, just to be able to get a big hit on the enemy nexus to try to end the game pretty quickly. As far as common relics, a lot that you don't really need, like Spell Shield. He's such a big unit, you're playing him so late, it's often not that needed. Same for like extra stats, and even Chameleon's Necklace. You want to be able to play Volibear, but since he's a expensive champion, you're normally going to have him in hand by the time you need to play him. So just going for a little bit more of a passive relic, like Z-Drive Prototype, to make sure you get the right powers, which can really help your Volibear. Or even going for like Star Child Staff to just give you a little bit of extra sustain. All right, next up we have Yasuo, pretty much the best relic for him. Tempest Blade, when I level up, stun all enemies. Great to just be able to often clear the entire enemy board because he'll stun and then strike all of them. So very good for you, gives you a great wombo combo. Crown Guard Inheritance, when I level up Rally. If you want to just be able to do a ton of damage as soon as he levels, pairing these together isn't too bad. Another relic that I like but can be a little bit situation is the Grand General's Counter Plan, so that while your Yasuo is on the board, Brown's Dart, you create a fleeting copy of him, which turns into his champion spell since you already have Yasuo played. Now his champion spell is fantastic. 2 cost fast, stun a attacking enemy, gives you great defensive control, just making sure the enemy can't really go aggressive on you. Now the one issue is the enemy has to be attacking. So normally on your attack turns, the enemy isn't going to attack you back. So sometimes this can feel like a dead card. However, there are some great benefits here. For one, this from your starting deck gets Elixir of Skill. So when you do play this, you draw another card. So having some extra draw is very good. This can also be very good for those opponents that are very relentless with their attacks, such as like Aurelia, who is going to be attacking you multiple times in the same round, and then even rounds where she doesn't have the attack token. So this can be excellent for dealing with those types of annoying units. Also, this can just work as a way to protect your Yasuo, because if he dies, this fleeting copy goes from his champion spell back into his champion, so you can then play Yasuo if they try to kill him. Really important to keep your Yasuo alive and on your board. Great defensive tool and works multiple different ways for you. I really like running with it, but you do have that downside of sometimes it's going to be useless on certain rounds, but it's never going to be useless overall. Overall, I really like it. Troll King's Crown allies have Overwhelm. This can actually be pretty good for Yasuo. Normally, you're able to stun some targets, but a lot of your stuns are on your more defensive turns, not on the offense. And many times your units will be able to scale up and have this large attack pool, but the enemy will just block you out and make games drag on for way too long. So a great tool to just be able to help you end games a little bit faster. As far as common relics, so Everfrost, when summons stun the strongest enemy, great. You are a stun focused deck, so just going for Everfrost isn't too bad. Banshee's Veil to give your Yasuo that extra bit of protection to keep him on the board and alive is also great. And then as usual, Chameleon's Necklace, just get more copies of your champion. Really good. With Yasuo, he is your main win condition. If you don't draw him, high likelihood you're going to lose. I've literally had games where I went through all of my cards and the last two at the bottom of the deck were both of my Yasuos. Felt terrible. So getting some extra copies of him is very helpful. And then, like we said earlier, his champion spell is great, so getting more copies of that isn't too bad. All right, last, we finally have Yuumi. And Yuumi is a pretty simple one for relics because since she is a attached deck, when she attaches to another unit, the only thing brought over is stats and keywords. That's the only thing that matters. Any of the card text for relics generally doesn't matter at all. So something you can go for, Gale Force, absolutely fantastic, because you'll carry over the scout. But then the second part, this card text, won't trigger. So you're just giving the unit scout. So Gale Force, fantastic. Just going for a flat stat relic like Warhammer, also good because that's some of the few stuff you can actually carry over. And then for common relics, very good for you, just whatever keywords you want to bring over, go for those. So pretty simple. There's a lot of relics that have just a lot of special text on them, and pretty much none of them applies to your Yuumi. So there's actually a lot of rare relics you just don't really care about. So stat relics, Gale Force, and then also just taking your pick of common relics. So Spirit and Impact, not bad. Tough, Spell Shield, Quick Attack, Fearsome. Just kind of take your pick of what ones you want to go with. And potentially you just want to go for multiple common relics, even taking up a rare relic slot. So if you wanted to throw on like Challenger and Quick Attack, so whatever unit you play, they get this combo as well as potentially Scout, so that they can attack multiple times in a round and they're getting the best trades possible. Yuumi is really one that common relics are actually great because just a lot of them are stats or keywords, and that's the main thing Yuumi can bring over. All right, that is it for this relic video. This is right now taking over 4 hours to film, and I haven't even started editing yet. So these videos take a lot of work. If you enjoyed it and if it helped you out at all, a like and subscribe is greatly appreciated. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.